Hello and welcome to Pittsburgh City Council's budget hearing, reconvened budget hearing today for 2021. My name is Deborah Gross. I am the council member for District 7. I chair Intergovernmental Affairs. Today's budget hearing, we are talking to the Urban Redevelopment Authority, to the Housing Opportunity Trust Fund, and to the Pittsburgh Land Bank. I am going to, in a minute, hand it over to our City Council Budget Director, Bill Urbanek. He will give us just a couple of words about how city resources are directed to these other bodies. And then I'm going to hand it over to the Urban Redevelopment Authority, who has their own presentation. Bill, would you like to do your presentation?
Thank you, Councilwoman Gross. The Urban Redevelopment Authority of Pittsburgh is the city's Pittsburgh's economic development agency committed to creating jobs, expanding the city's tax base, and improving the vitality of businesses and neighborhoods. The URA achieves this mission by assembling, preparing, and conveying sites for major mixed-use developments, and by providing a portfolio of programs that include financing for business location, relocation and expansion, housing construction, rehabilitation, and home purchases and improvements. The Housing Trust Fund in 2015 and 2016, the city of Pittsburgh assembled an affordable housing task force to better understand the affordable housing needs across the city. The task force recommended the city establish a housing trust fund. And as a response, the need for affordable housing, the Housing Opportunity Fund was created. The Housing Opportunity Fund is overseen by an advisory board and a governing board. The HOF advisory board is comprised of 17 Pittsburgh residents, including Councilwoman Gail Smith, and the URA acts as the governing board for the HOF. The city provides $10 million from the operating budget per year to the URA for the Housing Opportunity Fund. We also have the discussion today is the Pittsburgh Land Bank, which was created in 2014. Council members Smith, Lavelle, and Burgess are on the Land Bank board. From the financial and on the revenue or the operating budget, there is one revenue line item from the URA, and that is $520,000 for reimbursement for the 412. There's a single URA expenditure in the operating budget, and that's the $10 million I spoke of for the HOF. The Land Bank is not represented in the operating budget this year. Over to the URA capital budget, which is the majority of funds that come from the city. There is $7,110,000 for various programs, which is going to be spoken about from community development block grant dollars. There are no bond dollars this year, with the exception of under our facility improvements, the 62nd Street warehouse expansion, which is the URA to redevelopment building in Uptown. There is only $1 million in PAYGO dollars. Those are the operating dollars dedicated to the capital budget. 300,000 of that's for housing development, and then $700,000 of that is for URA property maintenance. And we'll hear more specifics on the monies allocated and spent from the presentation from the URA. Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Mr. Urbanek. Let the record also reflect that we are joined from who I can see in my participant screen here by Councilman Coghill, Councilman Wilson, Councilman Lavelle, Councilwoman Strasburger. That's the only ones I see now, but members may be coming in and out. As I mentioned previously, council members have been in session since 10 o'clock this morning. And it's about 1:45 now. So I'm going to hand it over to the directors. Director Flisserum, actually, well, all right, you guys already shared your screen, but could I actually have you unshare your screen for just a second? And if you wouldn't mind, just because again, we've got the viewing public here, could I have everyone at the URA who is here to testify just go through and introduce yourselves? I think that the public kind of knows the faces of city council members, and we're joined by Councilman Burgess as well. But if I could have you first kind of have your team introduce themselves, and then we'll go into your presentation.
Fine. This is Greg Flister. I'm the Executive Director of the URA. And sorry I'm not able to join by camera today. I'm having major problems with Zoom today, so I am dialing it in, so to speak, and following the presentation in an analog way on my desktop. So, present, I'll turn over to Diamante.
Good morning, and thank you for having us, Councilwoman Gross and esteemed council members. I'm Diamante Walker, the Deputy Executive Director of the Urban Redevelopment Authority.
You just keep popcorning, I think it's called, to the next person.
David Geiger, Assistant Director for Strategic Affairs.
Jessica Smith-Perry, Director of Residential and Consumer Lending, and also the Director of the Housing Opportunity Fund.
Jennifer Wilhelm, Director of All Business and Commercial Lending.
Tom Lank, Director of Business Solutions and Chief Strategy Officer.
Julie Edwards, Assistant Director of Neighborhood Development, and also here representing the Pittsburgh Land Bank.
Great, that's what I was looking for. Did we get everybody from the URA and Land Bank and House Opportunity Trust Fund? Okay, now I will mute myself, and you all can share screen, and we will can talk us through your presentation.
Well, again, this is Greg Flister. I'm the Executive Director. Thank you for listening to our budget proposal today. And again, I apologize, I'm not able to participate via video. What I'd like to do before we get started, though, is just to kind of expound a little bit on what has been a really extraordinary and challenging year, not just for the city, but for the URA, given the challenges that we faced. But wanted to, at the outset, on behalf of the entire URA staff, just communicate to the council how appreciative we are of the support and confidence that you have shown us over the past year in helping us try to mitigate the worst effects of this economic emergency that we're experiencing. You know, this presentation, our budget ask, we're trying to be very sensitive to the fiscal crisis that the city is experiencing and the hard decisions that you all have to make going forward. But having said that, I want to impress upon you that 2021 will be an equally challenging year for us as we work to rebuild our economy. We have you know, a lot of picking up of the pieces to do in terms of reviving and restoring especially the small business economy in the city, which has been devastated by the pandemic. So it's in that context that we present our budget proposal to you today. And so starting with the first slide, I don't need to read this stuff to you, but really what we're about is, you know, creating a city of opportunity, inclusive opportunity, specifically with regard to some of our place-based initiatives and people-based initiatives that we'll talk about in a moment. In terms of, if we can get this slide where it says understanding the URA's impact in Pittsburgh, I'll give you a little overview here. You know, we're going to talk about kind of some of the mission and goals and the approach of the URA, and then segue into some of our work that is really what I would more describe as our initiative work that goes kind of above and beyond our core programs and services. And then we'll segue into the actual budget and go through a line by line detailed presentation of our budget request. So if we can get to the slide, I think it's slide 5 or 4, it says our mission. But our mission, I don't need to read this to you, but it's really, you know, our mission is to really promote economic fairness and accessibility with an emphasis on shared prosperity throughout the city. So that's really kind of what we stand for. That's what we do on a day in, day out basis. And we're proud and gratified to continue that important work in 2021. In terms of our priorities, it's to create housing that is more affordable to the average Pittsburgher, encourage more home entrepreneurship and small business development, promote inclusive growth and quality job creation, expand neighborhood and Main Street revitalization efforts, and develop a talented workforce. Next slide, our approach. We have a combination of both place-based and people-based approaches, which we'll get into, and there's often a lot of overlap between them, specifically the Avenues of Hope initiative that you'll hear more about. But the place-based ones are obviously focusing on geographic areas of the city, The people-based ones are really focusing on individuals, wealth creation initiatives, entrepreneurial support, micro-lending, and the like. Our approach, this graphic really, I think, encapsulates a lot of our thinking. We really embrace this idea of equity economics that's focused unashamedly on distributive and remedial development in the city, converting opportunity deserts to opportunity neighborhoods, really focusing on wealth creation in neighborhoods and retention and acceleration of local businesses in our Main Street communities, focused on livable wages. I think in the past year, a much more intentional, and going forward, a much more intentional, deliberate effort to connect our work with the workforce development system. So we're making sure that people who need jobs or need better jobs are connected to the projects that the URA is involved in. And then women and minority-owned business enterprise ecosystem interventions. And then when we do redevelopment work, the old bricks and mortar work that we're kind of known more for, even though we seem to do less and less of that, we're really pushing for a double or triple bottom line outcome with those. So it's not just redevelopment for redevelopment's sake, but it's really redevelopment that's job-centric, restorative, regenerative, has an affordable component, is green, and connected to transit and connected to workforce. I'll turn over to Diamante to talk about our structure.
All right. Thank you, Director Flesrom. I'd like to echo the sentiment and again thank the council for the support that you've given us throughout the years, particularly in 2020, which has been a very trying year. And so in response to onboarding a new executive director and needing to really do some soul searching about who we are as an organization and what we mean to the city, it became very clear that we needed to simplify our structure and to really create an operating model that was user-friendly to the public and that we could understand internally to ensure that our work was having the kind of impact that I know that we all would like to have here in our region. So the structure has been simplified to focus on 4 key areas. We have a central operations function, which is where our finance, HR, and legal operations are run through. We have a lending and investment division, which focuses on our commercial and residential lending and grant making. And then we have a development services unit, which focuses more on our placekeeping and placemaking activities around the built environment. And then a business solutions arm that is always thinking strategically about how to respond to the needs of our business community that extend beyond lending and investment. And so in creating this more streamlined structure, the URA has really demonstrated a unique ability to meet demand. Our staffing capacity is focused on administering hyper-local programs that are, cognizant of Pittsburgh and who we are as a 99 community sort of network here, building trust from a wide array of small businesses, vamping up our outreach programs and placing a greater focus on Main Street management and community programs that really get at the center of quality of life here in Pittsburgh. We've pre-built partnerships that are designed to scale up so that the URA is not going it alone. We take any investment that comes to the URA and we figure out how to leverage that and how to really respond to the scale of the problems based on the amount of support and investment that is needed. This has given us the ability to adapt quickly in a changing regulatory environment. I don't think that any of us sitting here last year could have anticipated that COVID would become the reality that it is now. The word pandemic was not in our vocabulary, neither was Zoom, but we find ourselves in that atmosphere. And so the URA had begun to do work that would allow us to respond to that type of crisis back in 2018, 2019, and council's investment during those years has been instrumental in helping us to build those strong partnerships. And so in looking at the URA's operating budget, which is how we handle our day-to-day business, you will see that in 2018, we had a $10 million budget roundabout. You can look at our revenue types, which come from government, income from URA assets, income derived from program and services, and then other sources. We do contribute an amount from our general fund each year to stabilize our operations. On the expense side, you will see that we have a personnel budget and then operational and administrative costs that are designed to keep the URA advancing and moving forward. We do ask for a portion from the city, from the capital budget, to support these operations to ensure that we are able to respond to critical mission-driven activities such as Avenues of Hope. And so in looking at the mayor's 2021 proposed budget, it's a total ask of $10.4 million, split between two distinct activity types, one being the Avenues of Hope, which we'll talk more about in a moment, and the other being some ancillary activities around advancing affordable housing and being good stewards over the URA's publicly held assets. And so the Avenues of Hope activities are focused on Main Street placekeeping and placemaking, a focus on people and building community partnerships, the MWBE Catapult program, which requires a match to the PNC dollars that were awarded this year in the amount of $250,000. Neighborhood investment, which is a lot of our grant making through the Neighborhood Initiatives Fund, which we'll also talk about. The ability to invest in affordable rental and affordable home ownership, as well as workforce development as a part of a wealth generating activity focus this year, to really make sure that we are focusing on economic stability in our families, and that, again, we are matching our investment between place and people. And so we think about who we help. So these are faces of actual business owners that have been helped by the dollars invested in the URA. With your gracious support from the city of Pittsburgh, we've been able to invest in projects and programs that help to revitalize business districts, build wealth and keep wealth in our community, and help small businesses to grow. And so you see there Jasmine Bates, the owner of Ken of Duncan, which is one of the businesses out of our Gallery on Penn small business program. She's 14 years old. She's been with us since she's 12, and she's one of the most prosperous businesses that we've had in that program. Tina Daniels, the owner of Concrete Rose Construction, a minority woman-owned contracting firm that has been instrumental in helping us to rehabilitate many homes through our Housing Opportunity Fund program. We've improved facades with Jordan McMillan. They're at Cut and Run Productions. And then the micro lending, Confections by Casey Renee, who's been helped to start and grow her business in the confectionery space. And so when you think about our work from a home ownership or a housing standpoint, you know, we've been positioned to help homeowners, first-time buyers, renters, landlords, contractors, and community development corporations to really stabilize the Pittsburgh's housing market. So these are the faces of actual clients who've been helped to either buy their first home or to remain in their home because the URA has helped to make it more affordable. And so with that, I am going to transition over to Tom Link, our Chief Strategy Officer, who will provide some context about our work and some deliverables that we've had in 2020 despite the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, thanks so much, Diamante. And these are some of the impact slides, and I know my colleagues here can help fill in. And it's just to echo a theme here. You know, again, thanks to the City Council, thanks to the City of Pittsburgh at large, and I know we're on YouTube, and I know members of the public are watching, and thanks to the to the taxpayers and the constituents of the City of Pittsburgh for entrusting us for this important work that we carry out. And without the support of our of the city, really, it's really very difficult, if not impossible, for us to have the impact and breadth of the work that we're doing. So thank you. Yeah, on the housing side, and Jessica can jump in as appropriate, but and we'll get into it later in the presentation. But we, in the COVID response, and we'll talk a bit about it later. One of the things I think we're most proud of is that with the pandemic hitting it back in really full force here into the United States, really, and of course Pittsburgh locally, and back in March. One of the things we're most proud of is in the midst of economic crisis, health crisis. I mean, frankly, folks getting sent home from work, these types of things. We really quickly pivoted to help the folks who were in most need, very, very quickly. And we did this on the housing side as well as on the business side, where we were able to position monies and programs in a way to get to folks, both to keep, to do everything we can to keep roofs over people's heads and to keep small businesses alive to the best extent possible during an economic crisis. I won't read all of this, but we can certainly answer questions. But our housing programs through HSP helped, literally thousands of people. Was able to raise multiple $1 million. And again, thank you to the city for supporting this work to get this investment out to our city's homeowners. You can go to the next slide, please. This is a scatter map of those programs. Again, I think the theme here is that we've helped folks across the city on our homeowners and housing support programs across a variety of tools, and really available to help folks in need across our city. Small business, similarly, again, back when I think back in March, we were, we think about, frankly, our budget presentation a year ago, we did not imagine that COVID was coming and the economic disaster that we were facing. And one of the things we did was, and Jennifer Wilhelm was here as well, her and her team and her leadership, again, quickly pivoted to, amend it and sort of pivot some of our programs and create new programs to get monies out the door quickly to folks in most need. Again, our very, very small businesses, those small businesses who's, couldn't really afford a bad month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year, and get monies out to the door in an emergency fashion. Again, thanks to the city through the CARES Act, the ability to raise more monies, and went out to the private marketplace and philanthropy as well to support and continue to raise dollars, help several hundred very, very small businesses across the city. The vast majority, women owned small businesses, minority owned small businesses, Black owned businesses. And we're proud to say that I think, while we're just one piece of a much larger puzzle to support our small business community, the work we did was critical at a critical moment to help folks stave off, I think, economic disaster, back in the spring. And of course, as we roll through 2020 and I think into 2021. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. Again, a scatter map showing the impact, but these are, again, these programs are available citywide, helping businesses across the city. The vast majority of these small businesses are along our neighborhood business district, Main Street business corridors. And I can say without 100% very, very small businesses. And just to be clear, I mean, the SBA, I think, defines small businesses as something like businesses with less than 500 employees. When I say small businesses, when the URA says small business, we're often talking about folks with less than 20 employees, less than 10 employees. So these are very, very small businesses. Folks, many of us know, in our neighborhood business districts who are operating, micro businesses, less than 15-person shops to help support our communities. You can go to the next slide. Jennifer Wilhelm's here. I was going to let her, I think, Jennifer, if you want to take this slide quickly, I think that would be great to talk about how COVID's impacted our programs and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Obviously, as Tom mentioned, COVID has had a big impact on the work that we've been doing both in housing and in the business. Here is some examples of things that have happened as a result of COVID. On the housing front, all the existing COVID CDBG funds and HOF funds, for rental assistance are really expended. We are out of those funds, and it is anticipated that there'll be an advocacy push for a sizable portion of HOF 2021 funds to be used for housing stabilization programs. And it does put the URA at a bit of risk, not having enough funding to fill gaps on the development side. The number of applications on the housing side has increased from 20 to 40 per month as homeowners are looking for assistance in repairs, given that now people are staying in their homes and realizing that these critical repairs need to be made. And the down payment assistance program is becoming even more important as banks tighten their underwriting guidelines, and they're requiring borrowers to have more money down in order to get those mortgages. And of course, on the business side, we are giving out more loans. Just the COVID programs alone, we gave out 284 loans, which is an enormous increase over what we normally produce in any given year. And those loans are going, honestly, they're very risky given the current climate and the economic difficulties that businesses are having across the city. So that's a snapshot of where we are on the impact. But of course, we're doing everything we can to help alleviate some of those gaps and issues. Tom, I'll turn it back over to you if you want to talk a little bit more about the business area around business districts.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much, Jennifer. So, building on the themes of impact of COVID on our business district programs, I mean, I won't read the slide necessarily, if folks can see this, but the economic crisis, the health crisis, as we all know, is really amplified. I think inequalities that frankly existed prior to COVID. The stress on our small business community, our business districts, and really a need to create better resiliency in especially our MWB small business community and the business districts that were experiencing disinvestment. Fourth quarter 2019, going into this year, the COVID pandemic has really amplified the need and the time and the need to invest in business districts to ensure that not only they're resilient and can survive the economic crisis that we're facing, but really be positioned to take advantage of recovery when that should come. I think we're all hopeful that recovery will come, sooner than later. None of us know exactly when that will happen, or, there's obviously a number of moving factors, but we need to position our small business community, our neighborhood business districts, really to be in a position to take advantage of that recovery and be in a position to recover when those opportunities are afforded. From a theme, and you'll see this throughout the presentation, from a variety of folks, but on the business side and the neighborhood business district side, these are really our themes, right? And how we think about our work every day. We need to support our locally owned businesses, especially our minority and women-owned businesses, our Black-owned businesses, ensure resiliency in really difficult times. Ownership and wealth creation. One of the things we talk about a lot, and and I think it bears in our work, and as we think about our work moving forward, when we invest in a business, we invest in a community, we invest in a neighborhood business district, we really need to think about how do we preserve, community ownership of that investment, and that the wealth creation is felt mostly by that community, by folks in the neighborhood, whether that's to start a business, own a business, your one's home, be able to get a job, a well-paying job, and to build wealth in these different manners. That's got to be critical and at the core of the work we do, and we believe it is and will be moving forward, and it's certainly a theme throughout our work. Affordability, I know it's a topic that gets talked about a lot, as markets improve, there's an issues of affordable commercial, right? How do we ensure that our small business community, as markets improve, have a place at the table, have a place to have a business grow without being, allow for insulation from market forces that could lead to dislocation. So we're, have strategies, and you'll see throughout the presentation work that we want to accomplish in that space. And of course, workforce. This is something we do as a matter of course, right? I mean, our work creates jobs, and we've talked about that. That's something the URA has done for many years. I think where we're really thinking more proactively, and maybe a bit of I wouldn't say a shift, but a greater focus, is really to be proactive to ensure when we create jobs that those jobs have connections to the folks in our neighborhoods. Whether it's building pathways from a skill perspective, ensuring that our workforce partners are at the table to help folks shepherd, opportunities to the jobs that we're creating from a skill perspective, from a opportunity to, at some basic level, how does one apply for the jobs that we're creating, and these types of things. So these are really the themes throughout this budget request. So thank you. You can go to the next slide. Diamante, I think I'm turning this over to you to talk about Avenues of Hope.
Yes, thank you, Tom. And thank you for those who presented thus far. So Avenues of Hope. And so again, I talked earlier about the URA doing a bit of soul searching and really trying to understand who we are as an organization and how we show up for the Pittsburgh community. And in light of the pandemic, and when you look at all of the different studies that have come out, and you look at the accolades that Pittsburgh receives for being one of the most, if not the most livable city in the country, it doesn't always feel that way for Black people who live in Black neighborhoods. And so as we began to look at our work, and we began to, again, focus on where the demand was and where the need was, it became very clear that the corridors, that we need a holistic model for rebuilding Pittsburgh's Black business districts. And that this model needs to be both place-based and to put people first, and that it needs to intersect at all different metrics of quality of life so that we have sustainable Main Street business districts in key parts of our city. And so the goal here is to look at this year's budget and to think about how can we intentionally deploy resources to these areas so that we are not, again, doing studies and then not implementing the recommendations that have been made. And so the goal of Avenues of Hope is to focus on 7 major business corridors and to seek ways to invest in existing small businesses and residents using our current suite of products to kind of spur inclusive growth within these neighborhoods. And so the intention, if the work is done in a way that we intend it to be done, you will see these corridors emerge as Black owned and to be preserved as centers of Black arts and culture. And we will look at mixed use, transit oriented and pedestrian friendly built environments so that people have safe, healthy, walkable communities. This is meant to be done in tandem with other supportive services centered on education, healthcare, senior care, recreation, and human supportive services. So the URA does not own Avenues of Hope in its entirety, but I do believe that we play a critical role within it from an economic development standpoint. And as we look at budgets and we think about how to allocate resources, we agree that it is critical to think about it in these terms. And so it's a tailored approach in, looking to identify where certain business districts are within the development life cycle. And of those 7 corridors, we've kind of truncated them into 3 different phases: the implementation phase, the early visioning activation stage, and then districts that are ready to scale and grow. And so if you think about the implementation phase, that's Homewood, which is in District 9, Center Avenue in District 6, 2nd Avenue in District 5, Chartiers Avenue, which is in District 2, Perrysville Avenue, both north and south, which is split between Districts 1 and 6, Larmer Avenue in District 9, and Warrington Avenue in District 4. And so this thoughtful, holistic model is seeking a way to build community and stakeholder partnerships from our stakeholder base that will focus on planning and working with our city planning department, doing strategic site assembly, supporting entrepreneurs, helping with the project design construction phase, thinking about the public space and public realm as being assets in these communities, and then last but certainly not least, the impact on housing and maintaining affordable housing in these neighborhoods. And so the implementation tools and tactics should look very familiar. It is essentially the URA's work, the work that we do in business districts around, again, strategic site assembly, innovative project financing, public space improvements, cross-sector coordination, with the goal of filling storefronts with folks from the neighborhood, using publicly owned assets to create affordable commercial space, and then providing those wraparound business supports and services that are needed in order to thrive and survive. From a housing perspective, the URA has, been a leader in finding ways to deploy flexible, affordable housing financing. The HOF has supported first-time home buyer programs, as well as invested in affordable rental housing. This year, we ramped up the activity of our Pittsburgh Housing Development Corporation, which is the PHDC, which is run by Richard Snipe at the URA. And the focus has been on rehabbing residential units for the purpose of affordable home ownership, and then providing developer supportive services to community groups that also help to build affordable home ownership in neighborhoods. And so the Avenues of Hope model is really built around the Center Avenue revitalization effort, which has been a community-driven process which aligns with the community's already established master plan, creates opportunities for minority and local developers. I'm not going to read the slide here, but the goal has really been to build on the African-American cultural legacy embedded throughout that community, and to return publicly owned property back to productive use while building a community ownership and wealth building model for the neighborhood. And so when you look at the Center Avenue revitalization effort, what we've seen is that we've received 7 development proposals, which have all been advanced to exclusive negotiations. Each of the development teams are either minority owned, they're a small business, or a neighborhood-based nonprofit. This has been a way to invest in place and to stabilize this business market using publicly owned land, and again, turning that land back to productive use for those that already live and have already invested in the neighborhood. We believe that this is a model that can be scaled across the city. Of course, it can't be done without adequate resources. I will be honest with you and say that even with a $10 million ask before you, it is not going to be enough to do all that we intend to do, but it will certainly serve as an activator to signal that the URA and community groups are in need of the types of partnerships that will advance these neighborhood scale projects that hopefully stimulate markets by honoring what's already there and not spurring gentrification. So now we will transition into the capital budget, which I'm going to turn back over to Executive Director Greg Flithrum.
Thanks, Diamante. So yeah, again, Diamante touched on this earlier in the presentation. Sorry for the long lead in here, but we really felt it was necessary for the council to really understand the full scope and breadth of the URA's work and some of the challenges we faced last year, but we anticipate continuing to face in the coming year and the years that follow. In sum, again, a $10.4 million budget request, and that's organized nominally into two broad categories. One is the Avenues of Hope category, where there's a full 8.6+ million that will directly impact our ability to implement Avenues of Hope. And then the other category, which is kind of a grab bag of other stuff that we do, that we need to do our work. And again, as I said earlier, 2021 is shaping up to be potentially an even more challenging rebuilding year for the city than 2020 was. And so with that, we're going to go into kind of a line-by-line explanation of our budget request. And so I'll start off with kind of what we call a Main Street Place, which is really kind of the core piece of our Main Street and Avenues of Hope approach. And to that, I'll turn it over back to Tom Link.
Thanks so much, Greg. Yeah. So Main Street Place, we'll just walk through these. So this is really, where the request here is for monies to support, investment directly into real estate development, specific projects where, the URA and working with our affiliate, the PEIDC, which is the Industrial Development Corporation, that's an affiliate of the URA, really to invest in and control commercial space and mixed-use development. So, either as a master lessor or perhaps as an owner of a condominium or exclusive, specific commercial real estate development, we would use these dollars to fill gaps, funding gaps that are created in performance, but also underwrite really the cost of the development so that we can control the space long term to maintain affordable rents in the long term, so that we're frankly don't have to the deeper the subsidy, the less you need to borrow frankly to develop these, and that's really the assistance we're looking for to support these affordable commercial spaces. We have about 4 to 6 projects that we think in the near, for this specific budget request are matched for these monies. And 2 of them I'll highlight here just because they're probably the most ready and the most notable. You can go to the next slide. The first is the 4800 block of 2nd Avenue, where we're, URA as a landowner are working through our process to put together a, mixed-use development that includes a significant affordable housing component, but also includes about a 5,000, it's a little less, but about a 5,000 square foot ground floor commercial opportunity. Our plan is to, subject to fundraising and a variety of other moving parts, but is to control that space as an affordable commercial space for small businesses, primarily in the Hazelwood community along 2nd Avenue. So there's a gap we're trying to fill in that project. We think this is a prime use for the monies that we're again hopeful to be able to raise through this process to invest in that project. Next slide, please. The other one that's probably most ready, and we're again actively raising monies to try to finally put this project together, is Larimer Choice Neighborhood Phase 3, the commercial component. And excuse me, I misspoke. This is up to about a 5,000 square foot commercial space opportunity. The Hazelwood opportunity is actually closer to about 7,000 square feet. But anyway, similar concept here is for the IDC, with an intention to act as a master lessor of the commercial space in the mixed income, mixed use, affordable housing, mixed income rental housing development. Again, raising monies to invest directly into that space so that the IDC, with the support of the URA, can control the space long term. Again, underwrite the cost to allow for really, as deep as possible affordable lease rates. To maintain use at long term for local small businesses to be able to take advantage of the investment opportunity and to provide that space for small businesses and these substantial investments that we're looking to make as a community. You can go to the next slide. From that, and just to be clear, those are two of the highlight projects. We think, $2.5 million. We think, depending on final cost, budget, that type of thing, we could support about 4 to 6 individual projects. There are a handful of others that aren't as far along as the two that I just described that could be benefits of beneficiaries of this money should we be able to raise it to, again, with a similar model, to be able to develop and hold and control the commercial space and mixed-use developments to hold long-term and perpetuity for affordable commercial space for local small businesses. The next line item, Main Street People. This is really our investment directly into our neighborhood business districts. We've done a lot of work, and I have to say, when thinking about how I would think about this work a year ago, the work we did in the past several months with COVID, it's been such a critical piece of the work we do to quickly and nimbly react to opportunities to help small businesses, to help our neighborhood business districts, and again, with COVID in a real crisis situation. So, one of the things we talk about a lot is access to capital for small businesses. So typically what that means is, monies to a business from a lending or grant making perspective to grow, right? Equipment financing, working capital, these types of things. One of the things we're keen on is it's also critically important that we provide opportunities for businesses to grow the demand side, right? They need customers. These are examples of some of the work we've done in the past year to support small businesses. We've done a number of business education webinars to make sure small businesses had full access to information on how to apply for, as an example, the wide variety of emergency assistance programs that came down both from the federal government, local, state monies. We did a Get Online, Grow Online program, GoGo affectionately called, something we launched with partners to really help businesses build capacity, improve their e-commerce capacity and online presence. I mean, certainly with the shutdowns that were experienced, even as we think about today, the ability for small businesses to sell their services and goods in an electronic fashion is absolutely critical. And so that's a program that we were able to support and roll out over the last several months to help businesses. About 87 individual businesses were supported through that program, which is we're really proud of. Sidewalk sales program. This was, again, relatively small dollars, but really impactful, where we're working with our neighborhood business district partners on promotion and activities to encourage safely, but in a robust way, ability for stores to, Main Street business district serving, largely retailers, to interact with customers in a safe and productive way. So, we think about social distancing, we think about how you need to rearrange your storefront to accommodate customers. This type of work is something that we were able to roll out. Small Business Saturday, actually, which was, of course, this past weekend, able to support a number of neighborhood business district groups to help with that type of work. So these are the types of things we do with our Main Street People investments. Again, we reach, we say 20 business districts. I think if you include all of our education webinars, the Grow Online, Get Online, it's probably pretty much every business district in the city is served in some form or capacity through these programs. But the reach of these is substantial. I mean, we have 616 here. I was actually looking at some even more recent numbers. It's actually, I think, much higher than that. But these have broad visibility, broad availability, and we're excited to provide these types of tools and creativity, again, to help small businesses and neighborhood business districts to be able to pivot quickly to help sustain their businesses and their business districts through difficult times. But again, as we think about recovery, think about how we can support that as well. You can go to the next slide, please. Thanks. I'll talk about this. Catapult, we've talked about quite a bit. You can go to the next slide. The budget here is asking for about $250,000 to support our Catapult program. This is a program that we're proud to be able to support in partnership with Circles Greater Pittsburgh. It's had tremendous impact. It's award-winning, actually, at a national and international level. Really an incubator and mentoring and technical assistance process that was started in East Liberty. We have an initial expansion now. Actually, we're hopeful to expand into the Hill District, the Center Hellman Plaza, to provide space and mentorship and ongoing support to very, very small businesses. The East Liberty experience has been 100% minority-owned and women-owned businesses to really help folks, to start a business, to sustain and hopefully scale over time. I will say, we see a lot of different incubator programs out there and accelerators. This has not just been successful from a mission perspective, but most of the businesses that have entered the program and are involved in the program as we speak continue to be open, which, in many incubators, that's not actually all that common. So we're really proud of the effort and the work and the support that we provide here. And I know that, I think Diamante mentioned in the very beginning, it was the PNC investment that the URA was able to leverage. A good portion of that was to support expansion of and sustainability of our Catapult program. One of the, this money is important for us to be able to match the PNC investment to continue to be able to pull that money down and continue to expand the Catapult program. You can go to the next slide, please. Neighborhood investment, next slide. This is $500,000. This is our, as Diamante mentioned, our neighborhood investment program, NIF, as we call it. So this is really monies that we push out to the community, to our partners at the neighborhood level. This is a placemaking program. It's a public space improvement program. It's a neighborhood real estate asset stabilization program. But recognizing the URA doesn't control or know of every potential project, so we put the program is pushed out to the community to really help neighborhood scale projects that improve, that can make significant improvements to the quality of life and sort of desirability of neighborhoods at a smaller scale. And so we through a request for proposal process and due diligence process, these monies are made available in a competitive way to our community partners to respond to the needs that our communities have to make these strategic investments. And we've had success through 2 separate rounds of this. We're hoping to continue this, and that's part of the ask here this afternoon. Go to the next slide. And this is just a budget that shows sort of the impact of NIF in the past year, actually. Overall, I think we've helped 29 individual projects over the 2 rounds, 2019, 2020. The 2020 commitments was about 570,000. You'll note there's about 100,000 left that we have yet to commit. Our plan right now is subject to the result, this process, and what we're able to raise, we'll be able to roll that into a future round of NIF applications. But you can see on the right there, through the variety of projects that we supported, from public realm improvements to sort of vacant property stabilization, historic preservation, and the like. You can go to the next slide, thanks. And again, a neighborhood scatter shot. This is actually, I believe, the 2020, thank you, list of commitments and where they fall within the city. You can see many of them actually fall within Avenues of Hope, but not all of them. And this is a program that we've had tremendous success in helping our community partners, and look forward to hopefully continuing to offer this critical tool to our neighborhood partners. Next slide, please. Jennifer, I'm going to ask you to talk about Invest PGH, and it's the exciting work that Invest PGH with your leadership is doing.
Thanks, Tom. Invest PGH is an emerging community development finance institution that the URA is helping to stand up. We are very excited about this new entity, and we're hoping to receive certification for the entity in March of 2021, so coming up pretty soon. We'll have a certified CDFI. We will be moving the micro enterprise loan program over to the CDFI because we believe that we'll be able to further resource it a bit better being in that entity. We will continue to service these programs and use URA staff to underwrite and manage the loans. But we are excited about the opportunity and potential that the CDFI affords us to scale our work and attract additional funding opportunities. Next slide.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jessica Smith-Perry, and I'm here to talk about housing. So I want to first off thank City Council and the city for their amazing investment in housing the last few years with the Housing Opportunity Fund. That, of course, is $10 million that comes out of the city's operating budget each year. And I will be back next week for a council discussion to talk about how we are allocating the 2021 HOF funding. And then today, this request is, from the CDBG, PAYGO, and HOME. The URA is the only, subrecipient for the city for its HOME dollars. course. So I just want to thank you for your continued investment. You can see here on the slide that today we're talking about a request for $4.4 million for affordable rental housing. You'll see a request next week for affordable rental housing as well. And that is because there is a shortage of 20,000 affordable rental units in the city to help households at 50% or below area median income. And so we have our rental gap program, which helps to fill those gaps. And the $4 million I'm asking for today will be enough to help fill the gaps for 400 units of affordable housing to be created. You can see here on this slide just some photos of what we're currently investing in, and with this money we're requesting we can invest in similar projects in the future, but that's Mellon's Orchard in East Liberty, adjacent to the McDonald's in East Liberty, and then the Riverview Towers, that's existing senior housing in Squirrel Hill. And if we were not able to put in the commitment of city dollars to help preserve that, the seniors in the building, would have been at risk for displacement. So these types of programs really help to, preserve affordable housing into the future. Next slide. And this is just to show you that we do invest throughout the entire city of Pittsburgh. The building in the top corner there, the preservation of the Montana building, that is just a, existing apartment building. People drive by it, it's just a cool building in Friendship, but the rents in that building are extremely affordable for families at 30% AMI actually. And through these resources, we were able to help the Bloomfield-Garfield Corporation rehab it and keep it affordable. The same with the building, the blue building you see there in Oakland, that's also existing senior housing that is now preserved well into the future. And you can see the new construction going on in Lawrenceville, the rehab of the Center Avenue YMCA for single room occupancy for men, and then a current project that's going on right now in Observatory Hill as well. Those are just some examples of our affordable rental housing. And then in this capital budget request, there's also a request for affordable home ownership for $650,000. Home ownership in the city is incredibly important to help people become first-time homeowners. We have community development corporations, and also the URA has a affiliate ourselves called the Pittsburgh Housing Development Corporation that acquires, rehabs, and resells homes. They can also build homes new, and we can use these funding to help subsidize the difference between the total development cost and an affordable sales price to first-time home buyers. You can see here a picture of a house that our affiliate, the Pittsburgh Housing Development Corporation, rehabbed, and also another house that they rehabbed, and the first-time home buyer standing in front of it. Additionally, the Housing Opportunity Fund provides additional down payment and closing cost assistance. So not only is the house available at a reasonable price, but the first-time homeowner can also apply to get some help with their down payment through a mixture of our programs sourced by a mixture of your funds, of the city funds. Next slide. And this is just another picture. This is a house in Mount Washington. The PHDC, the Pittsburgh Housing Development Corporation, works all over the city. And almost everyone's council district, I think, rehabbing and reselling homes. This was a house in Mount Washington. And then the next line item in the budget related to housing is our accessibility program. It's called HAPPY, Housing Accessibility Program for Independence. And what's really great about it is it helps homeowners and landlords do repairs for mobility purposes. So on the next slide, you can see we also match this program with our homeowner assistance program, which is funded primarily out of Housing Opportunity Fund dollars that can rehab other parts of the house as well. Here's a picture of a before and after shot of rehabbing a house. You can see, the roof was done, and we do windows and pretty much, any health and safety items. And then if the homeowner also needs the housing accessibility program, we can do that as well, or someone can just apply to the housing accessibility program. So I love these pictures here because it really shows that, a small amount of money can be super helpful for people. You can see here through the HAPPY program, we did a ramp. The middle picture shows you, we just replaced one step But you can see that by that step being stable, it's going to be so much safer for that homeowner to go up and down the steps. And then the bathtub is one of my favorite pictures, because just the ease to be able to get up, out of the bath with a handrail there, and then also to have that lower part of the bathtub is just so useful for the homeowners in the city. And I think that's all of our housing slides. So I'm going to pass it back to Diamante to talk about land care.
Thank you, Jessica. So the URA's land care program is the vehicle by which we steward assets and land owned by the URA. This contract, I believe, was held by one contractor a few years ago, and the URA unbundled that contract to provide more opportunities to minority and women-owned landscaping businesses that live in neighborhoods, to give them an opportunity to steward the land where they live, and to ensure that we had more robust community engagement practices around how land was being managed. And so that's the maintenance of about 1,400 units, some of them structures, most of it vacant land. With a $700,000 ask in the capital budget would allow us to continue to work with 11 firms with about 78 employees across those 11 firms to continue to steward URA land. The land care program has been both a workforce development program as well as a way for us to scale up MWBE businesses so that they can take on more primary contracts on larger URA opportunities. And so we've incorporated about 75% of these contractors are MWBE. We have helped to build new technology systems within these companies to allow for rapid invoicing and prompt payment. The additional economic development priorities that this program helps to satisfy is to encourage entrepreneurship throughout our business communities and to expand neighborhood and Main Street revitalization efforts. And so last but certainly not least in our request is a new item for the URA under workforce development. And so I think that the work that we do is already inherent to workforce development. We just weren't being very intentional about it. And so this year, as we focus on building wealth in communities and providing some level of economic stability within our families, we believe that it's important to have this reflected in the budget. And so the ask here is for about $300,000, which will allow us to activate 2 to 3 first source hiring centers within neighborhoods to help connect 500 to 1,250 job seekers to URA opportunities. The URA is not a workforce development agency in the traditional sense. However, we do feel like we have an obligation to work with partners within the ecosystem to make sure that our projects are not happening in a vacuum and that folks know how to connect to these large spends that are happening within communities. And so the URA has expended its own dollars this year in 2020 to help build partnerships with Partner for Work, Year Up, and to start implementing citywide employment strategies and programs. You may or may not have seen our expungement clinics that have been very popular on social media to help repatriate folks that may have some challenges accessing work and being able to expunge records for very minor crimes that may be prohibiting them from being able to become employable. And so the first source centers are planned. We have the first one planned for the Hill District to connect residents to the Lower Hill opportunities. And we are also doing a lot of work in the Larmer community to figure out how to leverage TRID dollars in order to create a robust workforce development connectivity program. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Greg.
Yeah, thank you, Diamante. So just want to thank the council for listening through our presentation. We know it was a lot of material. Again, I think it was important for you all to understand the full range of the work that we do. I think speaking just for myself, I know speaking for the other staff too, but I think we're very, we're circumspect about 2021 in terms of what the economy will bring, but I think we're all very energized and passionate about the challenges before us. And I think we're all really excited about new initiatives like Avenues of Hope. Quite frankly, it's the kind of work I thought I was signing up for when I came to Pittsburgh. So really, really excited about that. But, you know, it takes money, and it takes money not just in 1 year, but it takes a multi-year funding commitment to really make an impact in these neighborhoods. And I think more importantly, it requires other city activities and city departments to kind of come in around it to really propel these neighborhoods in a way that needs to happen. So there you go. It's a $10.4 million budget ask, and I've been reminded that this does not really represent the full cost of what it costs the URA to deliver these services, but it will help us unlock some other philanthropic commitments we have out there to helpfully backfill that need. So,
Director
with
Flistrom,
that,
Director Flistrom,
yes.
this is Councilwoman Gross. I don't mean to interrupt you, but our public is still looking at a dead slide, or a slide that's still, there we go. There we go. It just helps. I know you're on the phone, so we can't see your face, but please continue.
No, that was really it. Just wanted to put a period at the end of the sentence there, and just wanted to thank the council again for all the support from the previous year, and we'll leave it there.
Thank you for wrapping it up for us. And just a reminder to the public and to, I know those of you who've been on the line, it was nearly an hour into our hearing. So we have members who have been on the line. My eye goes to, first to President Smith, who's joined us, but I know that I think Councilman Coghill and Councilman Strasburger have been with us. Councilman Burgess has been with us throughout the hearing, but I'm going to...
Councilman, I'll wait till last because I just got on.
Very good, very good. I'm going to see if Councilman Lavelle is there. Oh, there you are. I'd like to always give the board members a chance to make first comment. Councilman Lavelle, if you'd like to add anything or have your questions first.
Sure, I only have one question. So first I'll just give a comment, and one that is to simply thank Director Flistrom, Director Walker, and then everyone else within URA staff for the tremendous work they've done this past year, dealing with both pandemics, both a social justice one as well as the COVID pandemic that we're also experiencing, and the manner in which they've been able to pivot to address both is really pretty amazing. And they've done a lot of work. And I often have times have asked them to do things that they didn't necessarily know how to get done, but have figured it out. They've also, and this will probably come up later, but they've also given a tremendous amount of thought to how we can really move our land bank forward. And they recently presented before the land bank board. And so I believe with the help of the URA, we're now going to be headed in the right direction. So I also want to thank them for all that work. And just as, you know, as we have this sort of equitable conversation in our city, we talked to the Office of Equity earlier with the mayor's office, and certainly they're doing good work. But outside of that, it really is the URA, in my opinion, who is leading the conversation in our city on what it means to actually do equitable work and have equitable development and spread the wealth across our city and within neighborhoods that traditionally have not seen it. So I just want to thank everyone for all their good work that they've put in being able to pivot and address everyone's concerns and needs, and they will continue to do so as we move forward. My one question is, and I'm not sure if I saw it in the slides, do we have money allocated for property stabilization?
Councilman, we did submit a request in our original budget request for property stabilization, particularly under the land bank, because we believe that the land bank is probably the best vehicle to do that scale of stabilization. However, the request was not granted in the budget. However, we are very thankful and grateful for the resources that have been allocated. And we have looked at the land bank's budget, and we believe that there's a little bit there to get the work started. But property stabilization will be a gap for the URA, and we have to find other ways to fund it should it not come through the city's capital budget process.
How much was the request for?
I believe it was for about $700,000, but I'm going to ask one of our technical folks on the line, maybe David Geiger, to refresh my memory.
I think you're correct. It was 700,000.
Okay.
I confirm 700,000.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, thank you. And the reason why I asked that, if you look at all the slides that you all presented to us, whether it was housing stabilization, whether it was the business districts that you all are working on, all of that actually does also require us working and stabilizing those properties so that we can keep them in a condition that we can ultimately put a new minority business owner in them, so that the young girl that you shown, when she wants to have a storefront available for her business, that she can actually have some place to do that, so that we can indeed save some of the homes that are going to first-time home buyers. So I think that's a critical item that we as a body, meaning City Council, talking to my members at this point, need to take a serious look at. I'm not sure where we pull those funds from right now, but I do think we need to provide them with property stabilization dollars, excuse me, both for the work that they've already presented, but also for the land bank as well. And with that, I think that was the only question I have. I can jump back in later if necessary.
Thank you, Councilman Lavelle. I'm very interested in making sure that no more buildings fall down. And certainly we're in the neighborhoods that we're trying to rebuild. It's just, we shouldn't be letting things disintegrate, right? We're trying to actually find new residents. Thank you. I'm supportive, and I'd be happy to try to find some funds. This is a very difficult year, sure.
Yes, I mean, it's an extremely difficult year. You may recall in years past, I've given up demo dollars or said take them from demolition because I was afraid I'd rather stabilize than demolish everything. So we'll work on it. We'll figure it out.
We say it's always a roof or sewer. I'm always in the infrastructure themselves. It's so much easier to preserve than to build new, as we've seen in lots of city neighborhoods, especially commercial districts when they stay empty. But I'm not sharing properly. I'm supposed to be just letting members go first. So I apologize. I believe Councilman Coghill's been on the line the whole time. And so usually we go in order, but I think Councilwoman Strasburger was here with us too. So I'll let Coghill go, and then Strasburger, and then Councilman Burgess. I saw you join in early as well. Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gross. So, thank you folks for being here. First thing, my first impression is after your presentation is, wow, you got a lot of different things on your plate. It's not just the development arm of the city here. I mean, whether it's housing, just all the different things that you're working on. But my first question, I guess, Jessica, is for you as far as the Housing Affordability Fund. When a homeowner applies for that, and say we grant them $20,000 to replace whatever needs to be replaced, is that paid back? Is that paid back in the sale of the home eventually someday, or is it just, how does that work?
Sure. So how it works is most of home buyers take the full $30,000. $5,000 is a straight out grant. They never pay it back. The remaining $25,000 is recorded as a deferred mortgage on their house. They do not make payments on it while they live there. It is 0% interest. But when they do sell the house, let's say it's 10 years from now or 20 years from now, they'll get an appraisal, and we get an appraisal at the time we close the loan. And if their appraised value has increased, then we will take up to the $25,000 back, if their appraised value has increased that much. If it has not increased, or it's only increased a little bit, we won't take more than their increase. So in other words, we won't, require them to pay us any more or make them worse off than they were before they took the loan off from us.
So the intent is to recover the money someday. Not the homeowner who's there right now, but because they probably don't have the resources.
Yes.
I mean, it's almost like that commercial with Tom Selleck. What is it? What is somebody help me out? You refinance your home, but it's
reverse mortgages.
Yes, thank you.
I mean, but it's not predatory. It's
absolutely right.
We're helping them now, and only if they grow and appreciate, if their house grows and economic appreciation, will we get repaid.
Okay. Okay, that's good. And you said about rehab and resale of homes. Is that profitable for us, or are we doing that at a loss?
Yeah, so we're basically doing it as a loss. So the money that's in the budget request generally bridges the difference between total development cost and sales price. So if it costs 200,000 for a CDC to acquire property and repair it, but they sell it for 150 because that's an affordable price, then that $50,000 difference is where the city's grant money comes in.
Got it. Okay. Now, getting into the avenues of hope. Diamante, I just wanted to make one correction. Warrington Avenue is in District 3, I believe, not 4.
Okay, it probably was an error on the slide. I do apologize. We will correct it moving forward.
No problem. A tiny part of it is in my district, but it's not the business end at all. It's just the bottom. But I do want to talk about my avenue of hope, and that's Broadway Avenue in Beachview. Okay, so I nominated my own here.
Share that with me. Let me just remind you. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you actually are very instrumental up there in the way of properties that you own and are involved in. First thing is 1601. Thank you for knocking that down for me. It's huge. The thing was like a rotten tooth there, and I couldn't be more pleased with going through from start to finish. It took us a couple of years, but it's now gone, and now it's ripe for either redevelopment or nothing. I've said just a grass hill would be sufficient for me, and it is. It really is. It's just it's a dilapidated. Things were falling off it. Just to have that gone. Sometimes you don't have to rebuild. Sometimes you get rid of things and it revitalizes the district. So that's one clear case. I did want to point out that the building across the street, 1600, I had previously got a note saying preliminary work is being drafted and will remain in mix. The URA is likely to rehab the building on spec and hope and get it active to sell. So have we given up on an RFP process and people being interested in that, a developer? Or?
I'll comment on that. This is Greg.
Okay,
yeah, we put a couple of different RFPs out there over the years, and we seem not to get responses that prove to be very viable. So we just closed an RFP that was open for like 3 months. We did get an inquiry very late in the game, and we're following through on that. I'm not remembering who the applicant was, but they came in at the very end of the 3-month RFP process. But I think we're kind of done with the RFP process right now. I don't think we find that anybody can make the numbers work there. So we're actually contemplating, again, don't hold me to this promise, but we're contemplating actually developing that ourselves through one of our development affiliates, PEIDC, to actually own it, potentially in partnership with a nonprofit partner, to put it back on the market, because we recognize it as a real sleeper asset. A little surprised that we didn't get more serious responses from that, but I think it's just a very challenged property with its topography, stormwater issue, and the amount of rehab it requires in that market, and that sub-market is just nobody can seem to make the numbers work on it. So we probably will make a run at that ourselves in the coming year.
Yeah, Greg, I'm shocked that the interest wasn't there either. I mean, I know people who have personal interest in it, but it's it's on the tee, right? I mean, if you put that put that piece of property in Lawrenceville, it's $7 million piece of property. So
I totally agree with you. I mean, I'm with you on that.
I can't believe people don't see that there and want to jump on. So I think it's best. Let's keep it. Let's rehab it. I think it's a good investment for the URA. I think that property is going to be worth triple what it's worth right now in another 3 or 4 years. Not to mention, of course, we have to put an investment into it. So I'm happy to hear that. Forget about the developers. We should keep that. We should develop it ourselves. It's not that major a project here. This is not, this is not some 8-story, 100,000 square footage building. This is 3 units or a storefront and 2 units. So I'm glad to hear that we're going to take that approach. Now, when do we decide if we take that approach? Like, say, we've given up on the RFP, we'll follow up on the one outstanding out there. If that falls through, when do we say, yes, we're going to rehab it, and we start actually doing something with it?
Probably, I'm thinking at least Q2 of the coming year. We currently are without a director for PEIDC. The acting director has left to take another, or will be leaving to take another job. So we need to fill that role and then look at the entire range of projects that we may need to fund. But 1600 Broadway is the kind of the first, and we see that as kind of a pilot project to take to some of the other avenues. So I'm anticipating no later than the second quarter of the coming year. But again, I don't know how serious this other inquiry was or is, so we're following through on that now. But I think we're just gonna, put our head down and just do it.
Yeah, you know what, I agree. I think that's a great idea, Greg. I really believe it'll be a nice asset for the URA if you do decide to hang on to it. One other note up there in Beachview, I want to say is the taco stand. I don't know who on the line is familiar with the taco stand that we had built. That was very nice. The community is very happy about it. However, I will say this about it. One of the main reasons why I wanted to have that thing built was the IGA, or Las Palmas, who runs that. They had tarps out there all year long, and I don't blame them. They were protecting themselves from the elements, but they just looked like hell, and I just couldn't aesthetically. Then I thought, boy, wouldn't it be nice to build one? So we built a taco stand. It's great. I love it. I don't know, there was supposed to be some sides on it. Now what they're doing, since the colder weather has come in, the tarps are back, but they're hanging from the sides, not over the roof, at least, for this moment, but they're just trying to shield themselves from the elements. I thought that there was and I had my office look into it. I wasn't sure if we got an answer yet, but while I have you on the line, I thought I'd take advantage. I thought there were supposed to be sides that snapped in, snapped out, to protect them from the elements. We put a nice roof over it, which is great, but, I'm back to the same aesthetic problem. They're hanging tarps from it to protect themselves from the climate still. So anybody know anything about that, or?
Councilman, we will look into that. I will send a message to staff and to see whether or not we can get an answer to your query, and we will follow up with you, if not before the end of this week, early next week.
Okay, Diamante, I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. Just two things I would like to see in the next 4 years addressed. Berg Place up in Carrick, huge development site. This could be really a gem of some sort. I know it's caught up in legalities. Once we dance our way through that, I would love to see the URA come in and, work with a developer or developers. This is again, if you know the area, I mean, huge, and it's flat, and it's 5 minutes from downtown Pittsburgh. So another bewildering spot like the 1600 Broadway, why that it should, but this one's caught up in legalities. And, once we get through that, I hope that you'll come in and help aid us in, developing that. The other thing is the IGA up in Beachview. I understand we're in talks with the owners of Las Palmas to sell. Does anybody know?
Did we lose the director?
Councilman Coghill, you cut out on me for a second. With a question, where are we with the potential IGA sale?
That's right.
Yeah, those talks are ongoing. I think they've been a little sporadic. They've been kind of stop and start. I'd have to check with Emily as to where they are. As the last I left it, I think the folks, the operator of IGA, was trying to figure out how to get their financials together, and we're not quite there yet in terms of their ability to commit to that. So, but we will follow up with them. It's something that we're potentially interested in doing if they are showing interest and can actually resource the funds to be able to buy the building. We're all for it in concept.
Yeah,
we just don't know where they are.
It really does. I hope it works out. I'm not sure of the particulars, but again, thanks for all the, attention and, to the properties that you are involved with in my neighborhoods. It's not much really as far as, your end goes compared to the rest of the city, but, and that's it for me. Again, thanks for being here, and I will turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Coghill. Ms. Strasburger, you still there? Yeah, there you are. Do you have any questions for the URA?
Thanks, Councilwoman. I just am always in awe of your ability to cobble together funds from disparate sources and turn it into really impactful projects. And you've, I think, over the last couple of years have really helped frame it and, through an equity lens, as Councilman Lavelle said, and it's just a lot clearer for me as a council member, and I think to the public as well, how you focus that funding, because it's coming from so many different sources. And we saw that during COVID, early on in the pandemic, when you were really the filter for private funding and public funding from different levels of government and philanthropy. And, you were able to take that and direct it properly. So, just major kudos to all of you for the work that you were able to do so nimbly. I guess, along the lines of what I was asking the mayor's office, if there is the potential, maybe not in the first quarter of 2021, but perhaps in the second quarter of, say, some sort of federal funding that is either infrastructure related or COVID related, is the URA ready with so-called shovel-ready projects if it ends up being more of an infrastructure side thing rather than a COVID relief package? If it's truly about, like, show me where your infrastructure needs are, show me the shovel-ready projects, and we'll fund it. Is that something that you're prepared for?
Absolutely, we are. And if you look at, I will take Center Avenue as an example. It's along the Avenues of Hope. One of the major critical needs that could impede the ability to finish these projects in 2021 are the infrastructure needs. So if we were able to draw down some federal funds to invest in shovel-ready projects such as those that we see in the Hill District, I think we have projects in just about every district from an affordable housing standpoint that could desperately use those dollars. I'm going to defer to Jessica, as she's much more familiar with the affordable housing pipeline and how those dollars could be allocated in 2021 were they to come down.
Sure. Yes, we have worked to quantify that a lot, Councilman Strasburger. We have low-income housing tax credit developments that have really suffered COVID-related economic crises, like due to delays. The pricing has gone down. The pricing per credit has gone down, which creates very large gaps. And I do have those numbers. So if the city needs them, to be able to quantify that, yes, we need, this emergency money to fill the gaps to keep development going. And then likewise on infrastructure as well. Diamante mentioned Center Avenue and the 6 or 7, projects that are working on Center Avenue right now. We're collectively together. They have over $1 million of infrastructure costs. In Squirrel Hill, the Action Housing Project has some infrastructure costs. And there's some other projects as well. So yes, we could get that to you if needed.
Yeah, and I would add, this is Greg, and I would add that Penn Circle is another one that's the engineering, all the pre-engineering, the construction drawings have all been developed, but it's still facing a funding gap. So that's purely an infrastructure, very shovel-ready project that we could execute on.
I'd also just note, we share a federal lobbying team with the city. So when there are opportunities at the federal level, we're able to collaborate. I work really closely with the mayor's office and their government affairs folks. We're able to come up with sort of a singular comprehensive list between the URA and the city that really allows us to align priorities. We're not competing against each other, and we're able to speak with one cohesive and powerful voice to our federal partners about what the city of Pittsburgh needs in those terms.
That's really great to hear as well. I did not realize that. And is that the same at the state level as well?
That is not the same at the state level.
Okay.
We do, just to be clear, we have different lobbying teams at the state level. I work my hardest with Chief Gilman and the folks in the mayor's office to make sure that we're not competing, but we do not share a singular lobbyist at the state level.
Thank you. And then I'll just end with an observation. I mean, it's really striking that as much as we're trying to do in a really difficult situation in 2020 and likely an even more difficult situation in 2021 and 2022, the 4.4 million that we're distributing, to affordable housing projects is 400 with a need of 20,000. Is that correct? Do I have that number correct? That was really striking. So the need is the gap is just so great. The need is so great. We're really going to have to be creative about about where this, about how we close that gap, because it's probably only going to increase in the next couple of years.
Yes, I mean, that's why we're working so hard with preservation as well, because we don't want to add to the 20,000 unit number. We want to decrease it. And later, I know that you'll be talking to city planning, but they are ready to start the next needs assessment. So we will know if that number has changed or not in the city.
Thank you. Thank you all for what you do. Those are all my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Strasburger. Councilman Burgess, do you have questions or comment?
Yes. First of all, I have been here the whole time too. I had my camera off, but I was here the whole time.
Apologies.
That's okay. No, I was here the whole time. The second thing is, before I say some comments, it's up to the members. The URA the land bank is moving in a different direction that we've been working on for the last 6 months. The URA will lead that initiative. They can talk about it if you want them to, but if not, they won't. It's up to members as to whether you want a quick overview as to the new direction the land bank and the URA are moving to. I just don't know if that's something you want in this hearing. So I'll ask that question before giving my kind of overall remarks.
Different than was talked about with property stabilization?
Yes.
So in addition to the property stabilization that Assistant Director Walker said may be a land bank function.
Yes,
sure. I think we haven't really heard a synopsis about land bank specifically, so please do.
Okay, staff, if you would, please.
Sure, yeah, Joe's going to pull up the screen and share a couple of slides. So while we did not prepare a formal hearing presentation because there is no line item for 2021 for the Pittsburgh Land Bank, as Reverend Burgess said, we're pretty excited about some of the momentum that's been happening lately. So these are some slides that we pulled from the November Pittsburgh Land Bank Board of Directors public meeting. Next slide, Joe. So over the past couple of months, we've been looking at how can we make the land bank successful. The land bank has struggled with some pain points over the years. It's struggled to keep staffing on full time. It's struggled with title clearing, and it struggled with some of its legislative powers being limited. So we put together a plan that would essentially fully integrate the land bank as an affiliate entity of the URA. Right now, we currently operate just under a memorandum of agreement to provide administrative services, but we'd like to wrap the land bank into the URA as an affiliate entity. It will still have its separate board of directors, but it will be staffed by the URA. We think governance-wise, it will follow the Pittsburgh Economic and Industrial Development Corporation, and operations-wise, it will follow the Pittsburgh Housing Development Corporation. The land bank has the potential to be a really powerful tool for community-based development. So we're really excited to start this new direction and get the land bank up and functioning. So step one is to integrate the land bank. At the same time, we'd like to address those pain points that have plagued the land recycling system over the past several years. And working on both of those together, we believe that that will help to advance the PLB's work and mission. Next slide, please. So we've divided the work, the implementation work, into 3 different phases. Phase 1A and Phase 1B will focus on transacting on land, getting property into the land bank's inventory and disposing of it through the land bank's special disposition process. Phase 1A will focus on properties that don't have quiet title issues. Phase 1B will focus on properties where we'd like to pilot hiring outside counsel to quiet the title to see if that's quicker and more efficient. Phase 2 will be the modernization of the Pittsburgh Property Reserve. The Pittsburgh Property Reserve is a program that was created through the city of Pittsburgh through council legislation, and it's a way that community development corporations can request properties into tax foreclosure and subsequently purchase them from the city at a set price. It's essentially a set aside of a small portion of properties specifically for CDCs. As part of the tri-party cooperation agreement that was signed in 2018 between the city, the Pittsburgh Land Bank, and the URA, the operations of the Pittsburgh Property Reserve will transition to the Pittsburgh Land Bank. So we see that as one of our top priorities, getting that program modernized so that CDCs have access to property. Phase 3 will be scaling and growing, as well as the development of a public properties front door. So if somebody wants to acquire property, or if somebody's interested in property that's owned, whether it's owned by the city, the URA, or the land bank, there will be one central point of contact to help improve the end user's experience. So those are kind of our first 3 implementation phases we see as really important for the land bank. And we've detailed out on the next slide some roles and responsibilities for URA staff, for the Pittsburgh Land Bank Board, and for the City of Pittsburgh. So we see the URA as the administrator of the land bank, the one who coordinates and implements. We see the Pittsburgh Land Bank Board as the ones that direct and lead, and we see the city as a partner and a negotiator. So we've laid out some responsibilities that we think need to happen over the next 6 months to start to implement those actions. And that's all I have with the land bank. If anybody has any other questions, please let me know.
All right, there we go. I was just going to ask that the presentation come down. Councilman Burgess, do you have anything to add?
No, I want to, none of the land bank. I want to thank the URA staff, Greg and Diamante, who I've worked closely, Jessica, all of you, for your vision and your professionalism. You are certainly, as I have told you privately, a great asset to our city. I do also want to suggest and use this to kind of make an overall statement. I want to thank Mayor Beduto for allowing me as a councilman to sort of play in this area of development. I have a unique experience in that I have been able to chair 2 authorities as council person. So although I've been a council person, I've also had this kind of development hat for the last decade or so, and hopefully been involved with some of the successes, whether it's Choice or Bakery Square, of some of the larger, most successful, both market rate and affordable housing developments in our city. I have recently had sort of an epiphany. I guess, you know, when I had a chance to meet incoming President Joe Biden and he had heard of my work, it changed sort of my perspective. I realized that for the next part of my career on council and beyond, my role, although probably has not been that, but now I'll be very more public, that my role is not just as the councilman of the 9th Council District, but really as a helper of development citywide. I've been doing that privately without much fanfare, as at least the URA knows and the Housing Authority knows and individual members of council know. I think I'm going to do that in a much more public way. And so that regardless of what council district it's in, if council people ask me, I will help you with my expertise. But if it's an African American community, I will go into those community regardless of where it's at in the city and provide them with my expertise and my insight. Because I think that, and my interest though is not just affordable housing. We get better as a whole. And so I am as committed to affluent communities in many ways as I am to poor communities, because they work together. So I want to thank the URA. I want to thank the mayor for allowing me to do this. I hope the council people will partner with me. I'm willing to work with them. Irregardless of differences, this work is more important than that. I do think I have some unique perspectives and experiences and giftedness to do this work. And I just want to thank the URA for allowing this layman, all right, to come in their shop and kind of play with their tools, and particularly Diamante for putting up with me. And I think that Avenues of Hope is the beginning, but not the end, of sort of a larger vision of what's possible in the city of Pittsburgh. And I hope both my time on council and then after that time, to continue to play an integral part in visioning and implementation of this new Pittsburgh. And so that's sort of my focus as a council person, is that, of course, and you know, criminal justice has always been my interest, public safety. But how do we how do I now partner with the URA, the Housing Authority, to create this new Pittsburgh along with this mayor? I hope to partner with council members, but even without their partnership, this is the work I will do, and I'm committed to. So thank you for this moment of sort of making that sort of public statement. Although it's not different from what I've been doing privately, I just will do it in a much more public way moving forward.
Excellent. Do we have other members on the line here? I'm scrolling. I see Councilman Caldwell. Oh, there, Councilman Wilson. Councilman Wilson, I apologize. Do you have any questions or comments for the RA?
I do. Thank you. So I just want to say thanks for all that you're doing, and thanks for the great presentation and answer to some questions that I had already. One question I had relates to another question I asked the Housing Authority, which was, how many people who are have received a voucher but are still in need of housing, and then would that fall under your rental gap program?
Yes, it can. So not sure what the Housing Authority gave you as the most recent answer, but what I've been told by the Housing Authority is if somebody gets a voucher, they actually have a 70% chance of not finding a unit that will take the voucher. So if someone gets a voucher, they have a 30% chance of finding a unit that will take the voucher. When we support through funding, developers projects, they almost all take vouchers. Additionally, the rents through the low-income housing tax credit program are set up that someone really doesn't need a voucher. They can use a voucher if they have it, but the rents themselves are supposed to be low enough that they are affordable. So either way, that person with or without the voucher can rent in the projects that we fund. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, just a reminder to everyone on the call, if you mute yourself while you're not, if you're not Councilman Wilson or the people answering him.
If, okay, so that is just to clarify, because I can't remember what the name they said, the program they work, that is the rental gap program?
The rental gap program is our program.
Okay, okay, but that is the program. Okay. And then who do you, like, is there a set person that works between the Housing Authority and you all to orchestrate that?
We have really good dialogue. I don't know if we have a set person per se, but there's several staff, myself, Diamante, David Dagger, that communicate regularly with the Housing Authority.
Okay, yeah, I guess I'm just curious on how that all works. So it's the individual that would have the voucher that would like enter into your space through the website. How does that happen?
Right. So our developments, they go up on pahousing.com. It's a PHFA funded website, but the Housing Authority is also, we also communicate with them. So when they get people that just get a voucher, they let people know of any opening that we have. I will say that the URA, we don't have control over their voucher system, like who they give a voucher to, or their lottery or their order. So that we cannot control. If somebody comes to one of our properties, we can't help them necessarily get a voucher. But if they have a voucher in hand, we can make sure that our properties are advertised.
And
that answers my question. Thank you. I wanted to
program. It might it might also be helpful to mention the small landlord program the URA developed, which is to bring more affordable units online that can accept vouchers. It won't crack a huge dent in the issue, but it is a program I think that we contemplated and talked about in the capital budget, and that we've done some independent fundraising around so that fewer of those vouchers are forfeited within the city.
I think that's what I was wondering, like if that's like I've heard of a program where you're working with landowners that, or property owners that have to, I mean, could you elaborate on that? What's the program called again, and what does it do?
The small landlord program. So basically, if a landlord wants to rent to rent their unit affordably to Section 8 or not to Section 8, they can apply to us for a low interest loan to fix up their properties to pass Section 8 inspections. Because that is also an issue in the city, is that people have some trouble passing the Section 8 inspections. And we do have a working relationship with the Housing Authority where they will refer people who failed their Section 8 inspections to the URA small member.
Okay. Yeah, because I continually, am reminded that it's not the amount of, it's these gaps that, and this program is implemented to try and fill these gaps to have these properties available. And so how much is allocated to this program?
Right now, the program is new, so we're operating it with $500,000 of funding from PNC Foundation, but we're getting some additional funding, and I hope by the end of 2021 that we have at least $1 million in the fund.
All from private corporations that are donating?
Right now, that's the fundraising plan.
Would you see this as a longer term, or like an investment that the city makes in the future to fill this large gap?
It could be. This is our pilot year. It just opened 2 or 3 months ago, I think. But once we're through our pilot year, yes, it could be.
Are these properties that literally are like houses that need a lot of investment, or
No.
is it just small little investments that?
It's primarily little, and this is what I did not know until recently when I was talking to the Section 8 department, is that people get failed for, insulation in windows, cracks in the sidewalk, things that cost $2,000 or $3,000. So that was really, why the program was set up to do smaller investments.
Okay. So then my next question, thanks for explaining all that. And so I guess the last question I ask on this topic would be, how much money do you think we would need in this program to fill all those gaps? Is it the whole, would it be like $5 million? Like if we had all the money right now?
To fill the gaps in the units that are turned down for Section 8 inspection?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a good question. I don't know. I should ask the Housing Authority that. I think, at about 5,000 per unit, we could do the math. That would be, 20 per 100,000. So we could do 100 with $1 million. We probably need at least 5 million to make a dent.
That's interesting. Very good to know. I would be interested to know what that number is, because, the Affordable Housing Task Force is going to be started up again, and just curious on how we can, learn more about these gaps, because we continually talk about, I continually hear about the Housing Opportunity Fund, which was great, but this I don't want this to get lost in that conversation about how many people are waiting for housing. I mean, what situation are they in? Are they living with someone else? Are they paying more than 30% of their income? What situations are, people that are on this wait list, what are they going through?
Yeah, so what I've been told is extremely low income households, which is defined at 30% AMI below, that more than 50% of them pay more than 50% of their income on housing. So if their income is only $20,000 a year and they're paying $10,000 of that on housing, that doesn't leave them very much to live on. So to answer your question, basically people are paying more than they can afford.
All right. The last question I had was talking about the land bank. I'm appreciative of to have that presentation be included here recently. And I saw in phase 1 you have quick wins in quotes. What does that mean?
We're going to look for properties that already have title quieted in its name, so not properties that need to go through the long and cumbersome court process to have the title cleared, or properties that are owned by the URA. So to get the land bank to actually transact on land, to figure out all the kinks and show that it can do it.
Okay. And just furthermore on that topic, did you have an idea of how you would continue to gather information about vacant and abandoned property? Are you working with PLIs? Are you coordinating with PLI at all on their list of vacant and abandoned property?
We do from time to time. I think our first look would be the city's inventory, its surplus inventory. And then over the past year, since Director Flisserm has joined, we've really put together a pretty solid real estate strategy and have developed some mapping tools to identify which properties are best suited for development under several different criteria. So I think we'd look there, as well as the market value analysis that should be done sometime this year, I think, looking at the strength of residential markets.
Mm-hmm. If we back up a second on those quick wins, is that city-owned properties?
Potentially, yeah, things that the city owns that it has clear title to.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Well, thanks for your time. I appreciate all the answers and all the time that you spend to, continue to do what you do at the URA. Thanks. I know for the questions.
Thank you, Councilman Wilson. Honestly, I've lost track. Is there a member online with us who hasn't had a chance to ask questions?
You were doing so good up until that.
I'm sorry. We're at like, what, hour 5 or 6 here, and I've lost track. So if that leaves it up to me, I think I've got a couple of questions, which one of them is kind of on the theme of what Councilman Wilson was asking, which were really good questions to try to, I think, for the public to understand kind of like what are all the gaps that we're trying to fill. And one question I got that I didn't have the answer to, you may or may not have the answer to, was, does the URA and or the Housing Authority have any empty units? We have your slideshow and these points about people kind of waiting for cash assistance, we know we have this housing gap. Are there any units unfilled?
I can't speak for all the public housing, publicly owned properties that the Public Housing Authority owns, but from a URA perspective, as soon as we put funding in a unit, as soon as the developer opens up the waiting list gets very long very quickly. Like you saw on the slide, a picture of Mellon's Orchard in East Liberty. They already have a waiting list of 1,000 folks. The properties in Larmer, have a waiting list of over 4,000 households. So we do not fund any units that sit vacant.
Just going to repeat that for posterity. The East Liberty ones in construction have a waiting list of 1,000, and the Larimer ones that have been completed now for some time have a waiting list of 4,000.
Yes, that's correct.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen similar with the kind of light tech 9% developments that are usually they're only 45 or 50 units that go up, right? The one in Morningside, the one on Penn Avenue in Penn and Matilda, they've filled up right away and just have consistent waiting lists.
That's correct.
Right, and you showed in your slideshow the one under construction on Butler Street in Lawrenceville. We'll hopefully be adding more units in my district with the inclusionary zoning requirements. We have construction moving forward at 40th and Butler, which is just up the street from the Doughboy one. That's the LIHTC deal, which hopefully we'll see 35 new units there. You'll also be working with the Housing Authority to make sure that those units go to people who are at 50% AMI or below. And I'm sure the same thing is true with Councilman Strasburger's district that has units going forward. I had a follow-up question, I think, for the land bank. There's on your chart, Councilman Wilson asked, like, which ones are the low-hanging fruit? But then also in the kind of phase 1A and B, or maybe it was phase 2A and B, I can't remember. There's going to be kind of coordination on, I would assume, filling those same kind of mission goals. Like, where do we need housing? Who needs housing? And how we can clear title in batch to do this. Because that is the power, if we all recall, that the land bank has, that the city real estate department doesn't have. The city real estate department has to do kind of each house, right? Like file for title clearing, wait for a court date, wait for public notice, do the whole, then start, do the next one and kind of keep they each have to be in their own queue. And so we have so many decades of inventory that has piled up. that it's thousands, right? But then when you're a citizen on the street, you're thinking, well, gosh, this is so stupid. 20,000 people need houses, and there's like 10,000 houses sitting there. What is your problem, right? So what is the answer that we are to tell them? That's what we should see moving forward in 2021? Are we going to start to chip away at that?
I think that will be part of the scale and grow phase. You're right. The city has a lot of surplus property that's sitting on that does not have clear title. And the other thing I don't think people realize about clearing title is how much legal research is needed to be able to petition the court, to be able to identify all of the potential lien holders and petition the court to quiet the title. So I think that takes a lot of time, and we think that by contracting with outside counsel, they can help expedite that research that's needed. I think where the opportunity is, Nathan, you can probably say this a little bit better than I can. So chime in if you'd like, but there are properties that are in the city's inventory that went through the Second Class Cities Treasurers Act, and the Second Class Cities Treasurers Act does not clear municipal liens. So we think—
So we are the agent on the deed.
You are, yeah. There's a treasurer's deed issued to the city of Pittsburgh. That's correct. So we think that ways that the process can be quickened is if the 3 taxing bodies agreement can be amended. So that's part of the first phase of 1B, is approaching the 3 taxing bodies. So the city, the county, and the school district, approaching them to amend that agreement to either add the URA and the Pittsburgh Land Bank as parties to the agreement, or to allow the city to designate the URA or the Pittsburgh Land Bank as the agent. The city right now acts as the agent of the taxing bodies. So we think that by amending that agreement, that can help the process move quicker. And then I think where the land bank's powers of quieting title can really expedite is for properties that haven't been acquired yet. Is that right, Nathan? The properties that haven't gone into city ownership.
That's correct. This is Nathan Clark. I'm the URA's chief legal officer. I didn't put my name in earlier. But Julie's absolutely correct. The land bank's greatest ability is in properties that haven't come through public process yet, and to place a bid on those at a sheriff sale.
Sheriff's or treasurer?
At the sheriff sale.
At the sheriff's sale.
At a judicial sale, yes.
Okay, interesting. Good to know. I'm sorry, I gotta write that down so I don't forget that. And so I do think that the public is interested in seeing, obviously, something move again, right? We've been talking about this for years, but now the crisis is definitely keener. More people are homeless, unhoused, and in need. And we have this tool that we've been struggling, right? And so I appreciate that in your presentation you acknowledged that there were pain points that you've tried to disentangle. And I appreciate your work there. I want to jump back to another topic, just to keep this moving along and to give a heads up to the city planning department that has been waiting this time. I'll be handing it off to Councilman Wilson after we wrap up this section, so he'll be chairing the city planning section of the same hearing. That in our last morning hearing, Councilman Lavelle brought up that he would be looking forward to doing some revolving loan funds at the URA. And firstly, maybe you could explain to the public why the loan funds have not been revolving, which is when a loan holder pays back their, let's say, business loan. Why wasn't it then just lent back out to a new business loan, if that is true or not true? And then does that have anything to do with the CDFI that you're setting up? So I'll let whoever wants to answer that.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Our loan programs are revolving loan funds. So the dollars that come back through payments absolutely get lent back out. All of our programs work that way. Of course, like any institution, we do deal with defaults. Businesses closing, and our interest rates are extremely low. And so we aren't exactly always made whole but we are always also looking to
CDFIs
expand.
are never whole. They're never whole, right? CDFIs operate at basically about 80% of self-sufficiency, and that's a given. So
I'm talking about the URA.
sure, but even at the URA, right? I don't think you need to make any apologies for not being a profitable for-profit bank.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
So yes, we do. It's a revolving loan fund at the URA, and at the CDFI, we are starting that entity and spinning it off. It's its own nonprofit, its own organization. And we believe that having that CDFI will help us to attract additional capital from banks who are looking for CRA credits and other philanthropic sources that are looking to lend to a nonprofit or a CDFI. It also opens us up for some federal dollars that only CDFIs are eligible to receive. And the reason we are doing that is because we want to make a bigger impact. I mean, we certainly believe in what we've done thus far, but the need is great, not just in housing, but in business and in the avenues of hope communities, even more specifically. And so in order to really help make a bigger impact, we are trying to be creative about how can we bring in additional dollars, deploy those dollars, and of course, keep it going. It is intended to be a revolving loan mechanism.
Well, I'm fully supportive. I think it's decades overdue, in fact, that the city be supporting a CDFI, increased activity for especially around small business, because we have some in the region, but really we have more demand than we have capacity in our CDFI industry. And there's certainly, if you look at the National Community Capital Association, it's a multitude of tools. It's not just the business lending, right? Almost all other cities have moved into what we see in our non-governmental sector here, including cooperative ownership, including land trusts, both residential and commercial, including employee ownership. Councilman Strasburger co-chaired a task force around that some members have been on, right? These are all the tools that are important to keep wealth local and build our internal capacity so that we're not just a strip mall for out-of-town developers and suburban shoppers, right? We're a city. We want to own and control, and we want our residents to build their own businesses, to control their own neighborhoods, and to be able to have that kind of capacity and not be just all renters, either in housing or commercial, and not just be all people who are at the whim of other employers, but also our employers themselves. So I think these tools are long overdue, and I'm fully supportive, and you can let me know if there's anything council can do to be supportive. We keep identifying places where dollars would be helpful, right? And we need to, yes, this is like, as you said, I actually helped write a CDFI Treasury Department grant long ago in a previous lifetime. We brought millions of dollars into the city. And so I'm familiar with that process. Like I said, it's been going on for decades, and other cities are way ahead of us, frankly. So I think that's definitely a place where it's due. I am just looking at time, and we're at 3:30 already, and this was a 1:30 hearing that started for you all. So I'm going to let you all off the hook. If other members have any other closing comments.
Councilwoman Gross.
Councilman Coghill.
Thank you. Jessica, I thought of that program. I was thinking of reverse mortgage. Okay. We've all heard of it. And it does seem to mirror what we do. But just let me paint a quick scenario for you. So somebody takes the $30,000, for home improvements. 15 years from now, that person is deceased. The children come in and they look at things and they're like, well, look, we have to either sell the house or one of us could buy it. Now, they're entitled to pay us $30,000 if they do not sell that house, correct?
Yeah, yes, but it's a little more complicated than that, and I'd be glad to sit down with you and explain it to you the terms that are in the note. It also depends on the children's income themselves. I think I neglected to mention that we also allow the house to be transferred to another low income and just assume that mortgage.
So if it doesn't work out that way and the house is just on the market and nobody's there to tend to it, do we file a lien on the house then, I guess?
Well, so when we record the mortgage, we do put a lien on the house. So, I mean, it's, we could take the property and rehab it ourselves and keep it from going further vacant and abandoned. You know, by filing the lien, we are protecting the public's interest in that regard.
Great. Okay. And then one last question was, you're not restricted like the city of Pittsburgh is for contractors. For instance, all the repair work being done through the HOF, that contractors are coming regionally, not just within the city limits, correct?
That's correct. So with the HOF program, we have 6 nonprofit administrators. We're bringing on a 7th, and then we do have 4 or 5 for-profit contractors. Some of them came through our MWBE program, and some came through, you know, the neighborhood CDCs. But we will work with any certified contractor.
Aren't all the contractors for profit?
By nonprofit, I mean like Habitat for Humanity, Rebuilding Together Pittsburgh, you know, groups that are actually certified as nonprofits.
Gotcha. Okay, but you're not restricted. You can hire somebody from Newcastle to come in and do the work. Okay. Okay, that's it. Madam Chair, good job. Thanks very much, everybody, for being here.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments for the URA, the Housing Opportunity Fund, and the Land Bank, I thank you for being here. You all can shut off your cameras. You're welcome to stay on the line if you'd like to continue listening. And we're not recessing, but I am just going to hand the mic over to Councilman Wilson, and I'll mute myself, and we'll transition to city planning, I think, next.
Yes, and thank you. Thanks, we'll do that transition. Thanks a lot. And yes, so now we're going to start the portion of the budget hearing, which is city planning. I'm Bobby Wilson. I chair the Land Use and Economic Development Committee, and this is city planning's portion of the hearing today. I'm joined by Director Dash, and I'm also, before we go to you, Director, I'd like to give it to Director Bannock to give us a brief overview of your department and what we are seeing in the budget. Bill, you ready?
Thank you, Councilman. The Department of City Planning establishes and sustains an orderly and consistent approach to land use in the city of Pittsburgh that incorporates sustainability, city design, resilience, equity, and opportunity in its work. To achieve this end, city planning works with communities, civic organizations, and public entities to develop policies, projects, and programs at the neighborhood and citywide scale, and implements these policies through regulations, public commissions, and review of land development plans, master plans, and projects for compliance with those policies and regulations. There are several different bureaus, divisions within the Department of City Planning: Community Affairs, Public Art and Civic Design, also Strategic Planning, and as well as Sustainability and Resilience, and the Zoning and Development Review section. Let me switch my screen here. The total budget for city planning, again, we're speaking in relevance to reductions this year. The total budget's $3,309,000. That's a decrease of what was anticipated in last year's 5-year plan of $692,000, or 17.3%. Total full-time positions, 44. That's a reduction of 4 positions. Reductions in the first 6 months of the year: elimination of 1 of 2 community affairs managers, elimination of 1 of 3rd planners, elimination of administrative assistant 1, and elimination of 1 of 3 zoning specialists. Non-salary budgeted items have been reduced by $17,000, 9%, from what was anticipated in the 2025 year plan. Some of the examples of those cuts is Love Your Block grants reduced from 25 to 20, office supplies reduced from 22,900 to 15,000, catering eliminated, as well as cleaning at $3,100 eliminated. Anticipated July 1st workforce reductions of $353,000 based on average salaries and benefits of current employees. That equals an elimination of 9 employees. City planning has a couple of capital projects in the 2021 capital budget. ADA compliance is budgeted $50,000 in community development block grants. That's the same as it was in 2020. Under comprehensive plan, we have Fowler Park master planning at $40,000 of PAYGO funds, matching a $40,000 DCNR grant. Also, the Manchester Chateau Streetscape Guidelines, $50,000 Community Development Block Grant funds, and also the Marshall, Shadeland, and Brighton Heights Neighborhood Plan at $80,000 of PAYGO funds. With that, the numbers I got for 2021. With that, I'd like to give it back to you, Councilman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Urbanek. And I just want to mention that we have Councilwoman Strasburger on the Zoom call. I don't even know how to call this anymore. On the line, on the Zoom call, I have Councilwoman Gross and Councilman Ricky Burgess. Let's see here. I'm scanning. If I see anyone else, I'll mention as they join. I wanted, Councilman Coghill, as always. And I wanted to give it over to Director Dash. And if you could do the introductions for you and your staff, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll introduce, thank you, Councilman, and thank you, Council. You know, for all hanging in there all day and getting to this point. I will have kind of staff leadership or department leadership introduce themselves. I do have a presentation to go through the department and its work and where we see our budget supporting that. And then obviously all of us will be available for questions. So since Corey is kind of, you know, first in order, I'll have Corey introduce himself first.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Corey Lehman, I'm the zoning administrator and assistant director for the Division of Zoning and Development Review.
All right, then Sarah.
Good afternoon, I'm Sarah Minert, Public Art and Civic Design Manager.
Grant.
Hello, I'm Grant Irvin, and I serve as the assistant director for the Division of Sustainability and Resilience.
Lisa.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Lisa Ray. I'm the chief clerk for city planning.
And is Leah on? There she is.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I'm having trouble with my camera. I will switch to a new device. But I am Leah Friedman, manager of the Office of Community Affairs. Thanks for having us.
All right. So, you know, I mean, you know, our division heads introduce themselves. In addition to the 4 divisions that you show on screen, we have, you know, Leah talked about, you know, the Division of Community Affairs and the group there. They're a group that are under city planning's budget, but both do work in city planning as part of the mayor's office. You know, as Bill had stated, you know, our goal is, and our work is really around land use and, you know, and policies and programs to support that, with the ultimate goal of creating an equitable, sustainable, and thriving Pittsburgh, you know, that is based on its city of neighborhoods. So you see our work, you know, in things like citywide policy, the resilience strategy, our climate action planning, our comprehensive planning, district level planning being, you know, primarily our neighborhood plans, but those could also be things like park master planning, regulation, where we are, you know, Corey and his team in zoning and development review, you know, their role is really around, or primarily around private development and the regulation and review of private development. And then in implementation projects, whether that is work that we do supporting our other departments or work that, you know, that either Sarah and her team do around, you know, around the city's public art collection or some other one-off projects. As Bill stated, you know, our budget overview for 2021, the department shows 44 positions, which is down 4 from the 2020 budget. It's about a 20% decrease in, you know, in overall budget from last year. There were the 2 capital projects that he had outlined for $260,000, which is a reduction of about 45% from our 2020 capital budget. outlined in ADA compliance and the comprehensive plan. So what I want to do after this is just kind of walk through the divisions. And I think that overall, although this is, a hit to the department and a reduction in the department, from the capital projects side, I want to walk through some of what we've done with prior budget dollars, some of the prior budget dollars and projects that still, will exist into 2021, which I think will outline that even though there is a reduction in the budget that we have for projects, that we have a lot of projects that have recently started. As you all know, I was before you 4.5 months ago for the permanent directorship. So, in that time have started to launch a series of programs and bring some projects that we're going to get started and probably won't start until 2021 or started late in the year that will continue on. But we'll cue kind of where we'll be and where we'll look to be asking you for funding for the 2022 budget. So first, strategic planning. This is 12 of our positions, which is down 2 from the 2020 budget. They focus really on long-range planning, so neighborhood planning, environmental planning, our housing work, and our work around the ADA and planning for persons with disabilities. Some of our accomplishments were the launch in September of Forging PGH. So, the city's first comprehensive land use plan as we look at a Pittsburgh that looks to grow by around 20,000 residents in the next 20 years and by about 30,000 jobs, starting the conversation with communities and with residents around what type of growth they want to see, where they want to see growth, how they want to see growth, so that we can make sure that our development regulations and our projects really reflect that. So we did do the first round of public engagement, had about 450 people participate in a statistically valid survey, had another 600 participate in part of our online engagement, and then did a series of 6 working groups in communities that were listed in our conditions and trends report as being most vulnerable to displacement. So as a part of the conditions and trends report, which is essentially the existing conditions report for the comprehensive plan, one of the things that was noted is that there are areas, growth in Pittsburgh has been uneven, and it is, and whether that be historic policies, or other things have really led to a different Pittsburghs in different locations, and that some of those locations have residents and have places that are really vulnerable to displacement. And so, the intent of the comprehensive plan was to focus on those areas. And so we did targeted outreach and did focus groups in those areas in addition as a part of that first round of public engagement. And we'll be coming back to the public in March with the next round of public engagement, which will be distilling all that Pittsburgh residents told us and, and presenting different scenarios for growth to them. Public engagement. So this, in 2019, completed the public engagement guide. The pandemic led to, us having to really adapt pretty quickly to think about how we can continue to engage residents during this time. So we did launch the Engage PGH page, which was, the city's online engagement. I'm sorry, is the presentation up? Oh, now is it up? My apologies.
Yeah, sorry. I thought you were just going off. Oh
no. So with the Engage PGH page, that is our online engagement platform that was created, after in I believe August. Which was a response to, our ability to be able to continue to engage residents during this period of time. Also for a lot of the work that we do around development. So, a lot of the boards and commissions occur in our zoning and development review team. With that, there's a public side to that development. And, and so those virtual development activities meetings, because not all communities have the capacity or the capabilities to be able to run those online meetings themselves. the department has been hosting those meetings in most of our communities that have registered community organizations. On the neighborhood planning side, we did adopt neighborhood plans in both the Homewood and Hazelwood neighborhoods in 2020. We were also able to launch projects in the Hill District with an update and codification of the Hill District Master Plan, or the Greater Hill District Master Plan, as well as actually this Thursday is our first meeting of our planning in Lincoln, Leamington, and East Hills, where we are launching projects as well. We've had the Oakland plan that's been underway all year. We did complete an existing conditions report for that and have action teams that are underway. Moving to environmental planning, we did launch and have been working on amendments to Title 13 of the city's code, the Stormwater Management Code. And this, we've had public engagements that have been around that. We're currently, in the stage of kind of creating memos for particular changes to the code to then beginning to develop drafts of that. On the environmental planning front as well, we've been working on park master planning. We completed work in Sheridan Park, have launched park master planning in Fort Pitt Park and Emerald View Park. On work that we're doing with the ADA, very recently we instituted the Disability Service Facilitator Program. This is a program that was actually based off of work in New York City, where we are creating these facilitators in all of the departments and authorities at the city level to work on training and education of the departments, and to be able to work on transition planning, which is actually a part of our 2021 budget that we did receive. And then working on historic preservation work, architectural inventory in the Hill District and in the Hilltop. So where that leads us to 2021 is, and the areas that are on here in italics are ones that are funded by prior year budget, and then the ones that are bold are ones that are in the 2021 budget that's proposed to council. And so we will be continuing like I said, the Forging PGH, the comprehensive planning process through 2021. We'll also be in continuation of the online engagement platform, Engage PGH, which is in our operating budget. Then from the neighborhood planning perspective, one of the items that was in the 2021 budget was streetscape work for Manchester and Chateau. That is an implementation of that neighborhood plan. We do also have money in prior year budgets to do some implementation in Uptown, and we'll be working in Homewood and Hazelwood. We'll be continuing those planning works that I talked about in 2020 in Oakland, Hill District, East Hills, and Lincoln, Leamington, and have money in our budget for work in Bloomfield, which Councilwoman Gross had put into the department, and then what's proposed in the 2021 budget for Marshall Shadeland and Brighton Heights. From the environmental planning side, a lot of the things that I already spoke to, the addition being there is some prior money for park master planning for Westinghouse Park and for Hayes Woods. So we will be pursuing those in 2021 and then receive the money from the capital budget and from a grant that we received from DCNR for Fowler Park. And then in a prior year budget, Councilman Coghill had worked to put in the Sawmill Run open space and zoning study. That is something that we've had conversations with the community and are looking actually to draft an RFP pretty shortly. From the disability side, we will begin the transition plan. This is something that is required by the ADA, but is essentially the city's roadmap for how it looks to address accessibility issues and plan for people with disabilities. We will be continuing our architectural inventory and historic district work, with prior year budget. And then as Jessica had mentioned when the URA talked, we will be updating the city's housing needs assessment. This is a part of this is partially a part of the comprehensive planning work, but it's also because that work will now be 5 years old. Both the URA, the Housing Authority, and the department, we're all looking for an update to that information. So This is a place where we are all working together, but city planning will be managing that update to the housing needs assessment, and we'll be reconvening the Affordable Housing Task Force to be able to assist us in that process. And then, we hope that that work will also inform us around some of the zoning initiatives that we have around housing. I'll talk about that in a minute. Sustainability and resilience is the next group. 6 positions, no change in 2021. You kind of see what they do here, around sustainability, energy, resilience, and climate. I will not focus there due to time. Some of the big things that we saw from this team, completing the voluntary review for the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the mayor's announcement of the Marshall Plan for Middle America, zoning code amendments to encourage net zero for city buildings, a lot of work on, more specifically with contracting for the city and other users around energy contracting, which has been able to not only save the city money, but in addition, been able to help our transition to renewables. And then doing a lot of support to other departments in specific projects that, may be in prior year budgets or maybe in the 2021 budget. Some things that we see for 2021 with this group is, one thing that is in our operating budget is building an energy benchmarking tool to really continue the good work that this team has done around, trying to identify energy usage of buildings to be able to help us have a better baseline and, better data sources to be able to understand how we implement our climate action plan. Our collaboration with the National Resources Defense Council on food, work with development, and this has been part of our work with, with some of our sister city or close to sister city arrangements, around climate and energy, and, specifically with the city of Aarhus in Denmark, where we will be, working to develop that further and integrate that further into all the work that we do. Talked about street lights, looking at code updates for lighting code, looking at furthering code updates relative to net zero, continuing development of a citywide energy strategy and playing that support role for sustainability projects across the board. Public art and civic design, this is, Sarah manages a powerful team of 2 that will stay 2 in 2021. They staff the city's art commission, manage the city's public art collection, and really focus on design in the public realm. In 2020, the work that was was in our capital budget really did fund restoration of monuments and memorials across the city. We did receive grants for an arts and parks program from the Regional Asset District. Vandalism has been, a piece of our work as well, in partnership with Public Works. There have been some public art installations, such as the Broadway Avenue work as a part of the Public Realm project there, and as a part of Percent for Art that we see with other capital improvements like Whiteman Park, have instituted planning around other Percent for Art projects, that will come up in 2021. And then obviously due to the pandemic, having to transition all of our commission work virtually. And so next year we did not receive funding. There is no funding in this for 2021. So we do have some prior year funding that we will be spending down for some restoration of monuments and artworks, for the launch of the Arts and Parks program, and for work that is required via the I-5, the Crosstown Boulevard CAP project relative to the Cantini murals. So we will be beginning planning for that, the recontextualization of those murals in 2021, but we'll be coming back to council for budget in 2022 for implementation of that. Zoning and Development Review, that group has 17 positions, is down 1 in 2021. from their 2020. They are the ones that staff our most of our boards and commissions. They are the ones that really are on the front line of development and permitting, along with our kind of sister department at PLI, and then work on the project scale primarily. They had a much heavier lift in the pandemic to be able to bring all of our boards and commissions and public hearings online, our pre-applications, and all of the work that we do on the front end with developers. Continued implementation of the one-stop program as we had to move all of our all of our staff that were doing permitting to work from home. We have in that been able to reduce overall review times, which is always good news to note. Have been able to work on some code amendments with our other divisions, have been able to process nominations for historic districts or buildings, provided some consulting there. And I think one of the directions that we're really excited to go is that we've also been able to expand our energy and sustainability reviews through a program that we call the Performance Targets Program, which is trying to bring developers in earlier on district scale developments or large scale developments to be able to make some changes to those developments that are outside of the code that do improve their sustainability and their energy usage. We'll continue to see movement in this division through 2021, further coordinating with PLI and with DOMI, who came onto the One Stop project, came live with One Stop mid last year, continuing to integrate our work into the online engagement platform and to Engage PGH. And continuing to work to clean up some of the codes that we have. We haven't, gone through and done, more of a technical update to a lot of our code, and so we'll be working on that while we're also working on other zoning code amendments around housing or parking or conservation districts. And then lastly, our community affairs group. This is 3 positions, which is down 1 in 2021. Again, their role kind of as a, hybrid of mayor's office and city planning, that their role is really to promote city events, to provide certain services, and, address quality of life concerns. They do that through, whether it's responses to constituent calls or programs like the Civic Leadership Academy, Love Your Block, City Cuts, and Snow Angels. In the funding for 2021, we will still have the Love Your Block program, which is in the 2021 budget, and the Snow Angels program, the CLA. But one of their other roles will be really to continue to integrate kind of departmental initiatives across the board into the online engagement site. So, as just things that might not have been very clear from the operating budget outside of staffing and, kind of our standard things, is that there is money there for, for certain software purchases, energy benchmarking software, the Engage PGH platform, the public engagement software, and then continuing the Love Your Block program, which we reinstituted last year, which was the first year, I think, after a 2 or 3 year hiatus, that we were able to bring that program back and, really be able to fund small implementation projects in neighborhoods and with communities. So with that, I'll leave. And then, again, the team is here to be able to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you.
And thank you, Director. Would you be able to take the, stop the show? Okay, good. I just need to see who's all on the online. So I'd like to open it up for questions to Director Dash. And I'm just going to go by the first person I see. Councilwoman Gross, you have any questions?
Thank you, Councilman. I have a couple of things on my mind with city planning, and I have to say I had to step away for a little bit of a break during Mr. Urbanek's overview. So if you could just clarify for me, I was disappointed last year in the 2020 budget a year ago when I tried to do an amendment to add back 3 staffing positions to city planning, and members didn't support it. Are you down more staff this year in 2021?
That is correct, Councilwoman. The 2021 budget shows a reduction of 4 staffing positions from 2020. So it's a reduction from 48 to 44.
Okay, so that is now going back 2 years, then you're down something like 7 or 8 positions?
Yes, that's correct.
So I think we should be going in the opposite direction.
I believe that we lost 3 positions last year.
Yes, and we tried to fill them back, and I apologize for the harsh light. When it starts to get dark outside, my lighting situation changes here. But I'm really disappointed, and I think we should be going in the opposite direction. And I've been saying kind of on my social media, I really think we should be putting money back, at least back into the departments that do the work to help make our community stronger. And I include city planning to be one of those departments, right? We talk about equity. We either need the force of law in zoning for land use, as we've seen with the piloted inclusionary zoning that I did for Lawrenceville, or we need to really add resources to help you all implement the new capacity to do community plans that have the force of law. So lots of neighborhoods in the city, including the ones I represent, have had their own kind of self-generated vision plans or land use plans that were really not enforceable. And when development happens, which can happen really suddenly, as did in parts of my district, it does you really no good, except that you're there to say like, hey, developer, you're not matching our really, the consensus that we've built as neighbors with each other around our land use plan. And the developer can say like, too bad, because it's not enforceable. We need your help. Your department is the department that helps our neighborhoods codify, right? Put their own neighborhood plans into code so that they are law. And so, I mean, how many, you had a few slides back, how many were you able to complete? How many neighborhood plans were you able to complete in 2020?
Well, so the first round of neighborhood plans is now complete, which was 4 plans that covered 9 neighborhoods. So that was the Uptown Eco Innovation District, the Manchester Chateau Neighborhood Plan, the Greater Hazelwood Neighborhood Plan, and then the Homewood Community Comprehensive Plan. And so that includes the 3 neighborhoods of Homewood, Hazelwood and Glen Hazel, Chateau and Manchester, and then Uptown.
So the rest of the neighborhoods have to either try to do them, start them on their own, or we need to help them, but hiring, basically outsourcing, subcontracting.
Yeah, so we've started in the second round of neighborhood plans. We have started work in the 4 Oakland neighborhoods and in the 4 Hill District neighborhoods outside of Uptown that are part of the Greater Hill District Master Plan. Then have started work in Lincoln, Leamington, and East Hills as well. And then the 2021 budget, there was, there's a line in there for a neighborhood plan in Marshall Shadeland and Brighton Heights, which Councilman and I have talked about. And then, there's money that's been transferred to us by you, Councilwoman, that, for kind of Bloomfield and its environs, or however we want to,
Yes, we will continue that conversation. Bloomfield has been putting, again, its own pieces of plans. They've done their own mobility study. They've done a housing study on their own with their own funding over the last few years. So they're starting to put some of the ingredients that you all have on your list, which people can see on the city planning website, of kind of how to build a neighborhood plan. And so we're trying to see how far we can get before we need to kind of now sew it up for the, with the most inclusive community process, but with a price tag that we can afford. And so we'll be talking to you very soon about that. That's why if we could put more city dollars into your department in terms of actual planners, you would have more capacity for these neighborhoods.
Yes.
And we could actually get them rolling. And I just want to emphasize that I really feel very strongly that we are cutting in the wrong places. Trying to cut evenly. The mayor testified this morning that his goal was to not eliminate positions, But I feel that I'm going to push back and say I feel like some of these departments are already too understaffed. There's just not, we need bodies to add bodies back in order to implement the things that will help strengthen communities that I feel like our residents have been asking us to do it as part of the activism that we saw around racial equity this summer and racial injustice and how to correct for racial injustice. So I also want to say I see Director Irvin on the line there, and similarly, we've had years of discussion, so many plans that have consensus around, for the zero waste plan, to the resilience plan, to the climate action plan, and implementation takes people and people hours. So I feel like you need staffing, and I feel that some departments have too much staffing, namely the police bureau, and that we could transfer funds. 10% of the police budget is of $10 million. Your entire staffing budget for 2021 is $3 million?
Across the department.
Yes. So, I don't see the reason to be cutting city planning by 10 or 20%, to be cutting PLI by 10 or 20, I think PLI is 20%, when it really doesn't save us as much money as cutting the departments that have the biggest budgets would cut. So that's my personal opinion. And I will, again, try to add back the bodies so that we can do equity work, which involves land use, in my estimation, and the kind of support that you provide to the neighborhood organizations that are looking to rebuild, that I feel like where the wisdom and knowledge is on the ground in the city neighborhoods to know what they need. We need to support them instead of just letting them wait for another day. So I didn't really ask any questions, Councilman Wilson. mostly just talking without. It's been a very long day, and I am double booked for Gender Equity Commission executive session right now. So I may tune in or tune out and tune back in. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yeah, I went to you first because you showed up on my screen, but then quickly I realized that you were just through a lot. You were chairing.
And I'm double booked right now, so I'm gonna
right,
turn. I need to go to a different Zoom meeting, so I'm gonna have to drop this one. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right. I see Councilwoman Strasburger on the line. Do you have any questions?
Hi. Yes, I'm sorry. I had to take a quick phone call. So I saw your presentation, but I did miss your the last set of questions. So I really hope that the one question that I have is not the same one that was already covered. If it was, please just let me know. So first of all, thank you for all that all of you do. It's critically important, and it's helping to pivot our city, I think, in an important way, to be a city that has a comprehensive plan, that has real, neighborhood plans, that prioritizes all the things that I certainly stand for. There's an increased amount of attention on both the capital and the operating budget this year, and people are really viewing it as it is, which is a value statement, and starting to play with, hey, do we really need this? Wouldn't this money, looking at the larger budget items, wouldn't this money be better spent elsewhere or here or there? One that I've actually heard pop up is questioning the $4 million for the LED streetlights. And Grant, if you're the right person to speak to this, if you have the answer, that would be great. If not, we can follow up later. But to someone who might be a skeptic as to why that might be necessary, or why whether there's any payback for that, just in addition to being ready for smart spines and that sort of thing, is there eventual financial payback in addition to it being, an important climate-friendly initiative?
Yeah, certainly. So just a couple bits about streetlights. One is that streetlights are our largest point of electricity consumption across our energy portfolio. So when we look at the amount of energy that we consume, streetlights is number one. And when you look at energy efficiency technology, predominantly the usage of LED or light emitting diode technologies, it creates one of the greatest returns in energy efficiency that you could imagine. So anywhere between 40 and 50% reduction in the amount of consumption. And that, just for a quick kind of arithmetic, that also equals to about $1 in energy savings and also a pound of CO2 reduction. So when we're talking about energy efficiency, carbon emissions reductions, and the amount of electricity that we consume in streetlights, it's a big, big win in terms of all of those measures. And so when we think about the return on that investment, we have some modeling that we've developed, for example, with energy efficiency projects that we've done in parking garages. And that return on investment is anywhere between 3 and 4 years, depending upon the garage. So that dollar that you invest comes back to you in pretty rapid succession in terms of the return on investment. So from energy efficiency, return on investment, carbon emissions reduction, streetlights is a huge benefit. And one of the most, I would say it's not easy, but one of the simplest kind of tactics we can take in terms of carbon emissions reduction. The other thing that I would note too is the ability to improve lighting quality across the city. So one of the things that in any conversation around streetlights, we have to understand, why do we have streetlights in the first place? And so if you go back to the first candles that went along streets way back in the day, the reason that you have streetlights is a public safety investment. And so when we think about providing proper illumination throughout the city, it's about providing that lighting quality across city neighborhoods and through the right of way. So in doing so, that LED lighting is also another kind of way in which we can improve public safety, reduce kind of impacts of incidents and things of that nature. So it's one of those types of projects that have multiple benefits that are scaled across the investments that not only impact positively city operations, but also impact quality of life across our neighborhoods.
Thank you. If I ever get questions about that again, I did write some of that down, and I can also just point people back to this hearing. So
I'm happy to share the benefits of streetlights.
Thank you. And it's just like one slice of what you're doing in your part of city planning. So I want to pivot quickly to the comprehensive plan. And when it comes to, I guess, I don't think people have experienced, or sort of, if they haven't lived in another city that has a comp plan, they don't really know the value of it. What, in just really simple terms, what will having a comprehensive plan allow us as a city to do, in addition to the neighborhood plans that we're developing? What will change in the way that we approach attraction of development, of empowering constituents and residents' voices, engaging people, and what will change once it's complete? I mean, the process is one thing, but once it's complete.
Sure, and I'll start with a comprehensive plan and move to neighborhood plans after that. So a comprehensive plan is really a guiding document for us around how the city grows. And so, Pittsburgh luckily has been able to reverse the decline that it once had, and is now at a point where we're starting to see growth. And although that growth seems substantial to us, it is not kind of at a level that we're seeing in a lot of other cities across the country, but we are starting to see growth. And so with growth comes development, and with development comes a lot of the concerns that residents have around what impacts development may have, what secondary impacts development may have, and what type of development is going on around them. And so what a comprehensive plan allows us to do is allows us to have that community conversation first, really understand what the values are that we have as a city, how we weigh different things. So how we weigh how development improves our tax base versus what energy changes, what changes it may make to energy efficiency, or to changes in the mobility system, or open space, are all conversations that we want to have at a high level to be able to guide our work. And so when those developments are coming, to the zoning and development review team, Corey, the team that Corey manages, that we've been able to adjust our land use regulations in a way that fits that fits what the city wants, how the city wants to see development happen. And so, really from a high level, that's what a comprehensive plan does. What are our values as we grow, and how do we make it so that the development that comes in, comes in place of those values? And then moving to neighborhood plans are a much more detailed look at the certain areas of the neighborhood, or certain areas of the city, and really getting down and starting to look more at a parcel by parcel or a project by project basis of what needs to go on to get to that value system that neighborhood may have, that may be a little different than the city as a whole. And so, what are the specific projects that implement that, the vision of that neighborhood? What are the specific land use changes? What are the specific properties that need to be focused on? When we were working through this project in Uptown, we were able to get values from that community that said affordability matters, energy production and energy conservation matter, preservation matters, and then we were able to reflect that in open space matters. And so we then reflected that in the projects that we pursued after that. And so whether it was doing design work for a trail in the neighborhood to be able to connect to the Three Rivers Heritage Trail, whether that was thinking about how district energy was able to be integrated into developments in the Fifth Forbes corridor, or could relate to bus rapid transit improvements that were coming through, or open space, public art improvements that we were doing to Tustin Park, during that time frame, that there was implementation work that came out of that really then followed that strategy, that blueprint that the city, or that the neighborhood really defined. And the neighborhood, that residents came to us and told us what they wanted, and we just facilitated that process to be able to get to that vision and goals and those projects that were really important to those communities. And so, to us, that is the goal with our neighborhood plans, is to be able to listen to residents and be able to facilitate these processes to push forth their visions for their communities, and be able to help them work through what projects that take that form takes in.
Thank you. I think, it's always a helpful reminder for me, and with people who are engaging online with these hearings, I wanted to make sure that they understood that too, because I think a lot of people are still wondering what that looks like. In my mind, it's almost like a filter like an ethical filter, to use a social work term, that we use to decide what we want in the city and what we don't. The comp plan is, we decide, do we want this? Is this right? Does this meet our values and our standards for what we've already decided as a community that we want, or not? And it seems the challenge these days, and it's a lot of things coming together, I'm sure in your world, you talk about this ad nauseum, is that with different people engaging in different ways online, and kind of this open source ability to share information, everyone feels like they have a stake in every new development that happens, and everyone wants everything out of that new development, right? They want it to satisfy all needs, and one development can't. Only a set of really well-planned kind of developments or changes, or a neighborhood plan essentially can do that. And so I'm really, really looking forward to the day when all 90 neighborhoods have a plan, because then you can point back to that and say, does this fit what the community decided is in the plan? And then we can just work to keep them updated, because communities change and people change and the needs change. But to be able to have a successful neighborhood plan, we need to make sure that truly the community that lives there and is affected by that is the one weighing in. So to anyone here, I mean, whether it's Leah, whether it's, you know, Andrew and Corey, whether it's Sarah, I mean, what are you learning during this time, with necessity being the mother of invention, right? And Engage PGH, I think, being a result of that, and really positive result. I find it so helpful to have all of the DOMI projects and the planning projects in one place. How are we doing in your estimation at truly capturing as much of the community as possible when we're creating these plans and when we're trying to engage people on, you know, a difficult issue like what to do with a certain public art feature, or you know, that we're listening to all voices and not just the loudest minority, perhaps?
That's a great question. I don't know if I have a full answer for you, councilperson, but you know, since we've instituted the Engage platform, you know, we realized that there was, you know, I mean, number one, there's this necessity for us as the city to continue to have resident engagement in our projects. You know, I think that in the first month, having, you know, well over 4,000 people participate, you know, just in, you know, in month one of having the platform, you know, some of that being triggered by one specific project, but there was a lot of interest in people communicating with us around, you know, the future. There's not only the future of the city, but the future of specific projects, or, you know, or what the operating budget looks like, or, you know, or any host of things. And so, you know, we're trying to get better with our online engagement and continuing to evolve. I mean, I think that, you know, we realize that we're not able to do everything we might have been able to do in person at first, and that there are some things that, you know, just need a little bit more of a guiding hand as far as engagement. And so we're trying to learn from that to be able to kind of create the right bite sizes for, you know, for people to, you know, to be able to talk about, you know, issues of all sorts of scales, you know, from a streets project in Manchester to the comprehensive plan looking at the entire city. There are a lot of different scales, and I think we're continuing to learn there, and I think continuing to improve there. We've realized that, you know, we have to have a variety of types of ways that we engage people. You know, that some people might only fill out a short questionnaire. Some people will dig in and put points on a map, and some people, you know, want to provide us line by line feedback on things. And we're trying to create opportunities for all of those scales to occur. And we're really working to try to work harder. And Leah and her team are, you know, kind of crucial to this as well, you know, on making sure that we have a variety of projects that people are engaging with, and that they know that they can engage with all in one place. So, you know, whether that is the long range planning projects that city planning has historically done as engagement projects, whether that's implementation projects through DPW or through DOMI, you know, or whether that's Corey and his team, we're working right now to be able to set up, you know, engagement pages for specific development review projects. So, you know, as we expand the ways that we don't require people to come to a public hearing to engage with a project. And, you know, and I'd say that, you know, in things that have worked, you know, that have worked well during a pandemic, I think that transitioning a lot of our boards and commissions virtually has increased the number of people that are participating in those boards and commissions. And I think that, you know, we want to be able to capitalize that. We want to be able to expand that, and we want to be able to make sure that we're able to not only expand the number of people, but expand the depth of engagement and the depth of, you know, resident feedback that we can use to truly influence decisions. I'll let others jump in from the team.
Thank you. I know that was a big question, so I really appreciate the really nuanced answer. And I guess just one last closing thought is that, you know, the challenge that I come across is that, you're never going to capture everyone. I just heard today that for all the work that we did to try to get people to fill out the census, we got 72% of Allegheny County residents filling out the census. And that was like months and months and months of work on nothing but that. So like, you're never going to capture everyone, but so much of the, going deeper, going broad, both on the issue, but also in an engagement, but also I think sometimes to go broad, you have to like build that trust with the people who know a lot of people. And that takes time and energy. And I think that, Leah and your team, you do that really well, but council members also have that ability. And in some neighborhoods, it's the community group. In some neighborhoods, it's not necessarily the community group. So I know we have RCOs now, but I guess just an observation that is sometimes necessary too, is the trust building, which is time consuming, but probably pays off then. If you have that foundation of trust, then they will use their network, bring in their network when there's actually a need for their network to engage. So, okay, I don't have any further questions. Thank you all so much for hanging around this hearing and for all the work that you do and for answering our questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I do not see any other council members, so I have a couple questions. And by the way, apologize if there was some miscommunication. I mean, I think you're in control to share a screen there with that presentation, but I was following along pretty well there. I thought you were doing a pretty good job. I didn't realize, so.
Well, we got it fixed eventually, so.
Yeah. Okay, I had a question about, I think this one's specifically for Corey. Maybe it wasn't the slide that I didn't see, but could you expand on the service legal agreements that are done? And I think, was that the one you said that those are happening faster now, or is there a way that can be measured? Because we had a nice slide from PLI that kind of talked about the way they were, getting their ducks in a row, like what was being done versus what was still outstanding.
Sure. So there's a little bit of difference with PLI and zoning in sort of the history of having service level agreements. The systems that they had in place and sort of the style of reviews were established years ago. So there's sort of a culture of SLAs, and they had the staffing for that. When we went into Computronics at the last year into the new permitting system, the one-stop permitting system, that was really the first time that we had that we were able to start generating data to be able to see what our SLAs were, and it was also a complete shift in how zoning worked for a lot of the projects. Where it had been, a lot of it was sort of on demand at the counter. And it was sort of, you go to zoning first, and then you go to PLI, and sort of bounce from counter to counter. And so there wasn't, it was a lot of like, all right, you come to the counter and you'd find out, well, you need to go do something else and then come back. And so there wasn't really data to track. And see, we didn't have the sort of system that we have now, which is, it runs more concurrently with PLI. And we have the ability to sort of track the the customers' entry points into the system, how long it's taking for us to get back to them. And it's a more consistent service system overall. But we didn't, when we went into the system, have any data really. And so we're just now kind of getting our first year's worth of data to see, how long our review times had taken, has there been progress? So we were able to see that there has been, certainly it's been progress. We've had some staffing changes to, I think it was, maybe 3 months ago, 3 or 4 months ago, we were able to staff the position that really is sort of the team lead for our development plan reviewers. and that's without having had someone to sort of review the data, review the queue, manage the queue, make sure, you know, the right projects were getting to the right reviewers and everyone was kind of on task. Again, this was something that PLI had in their system for years. We just finally got going. So we're still working on getting the data to and sort of making some of those initial leaps. But the initial rounds of data do show those leaps, and I think we can probably get better numbers. There's still some quirks in the reporting data that you know, just makes it sometimes challenging to compare apples to apples. You know, but again, that all comes with just being in the system, you know, making those changes and optimizing the system. From when we started in Computronics to now, we made significant, over the first 6 months working with PLI, who we meet with regularly and work with to try to optimize for our customers' sake and for our internal reviewers' sake. We made significant strides in how the zoning applications were set up, in how intake was done. Again, this was a new marriage where PLI's intake staff are working to intake zoning applications as well as PLI applications. So there's sharing of knowledge, there's sort of joint staffing. So there's been a lot. I can get you, I can work with Andrew and I can work with our team to kind of compile more numbers to kind of show, but I think we were able to see significant leaps sort of that first 6 months of being in Computronics, being in the one-stop system to show significant changes from our review times overall. And then over the last, you know, over basically the time that we've gone, you know, working from home during the pandemic, we've been able to, there was an initial, you know, kind of crisis point trying to get you know, trying to adjust to be working from home and manage all of that. And we were able to, and that sort of came along with getting the new person in that position that I mentioned, the sort of team lead. And I think since we got Will in that position, we've made significant strides there too. Andrew, is there anything else that you wanted to?
No, I think that covered it.
Okay.
Thanks, Corey.
All right, thanks. So yes, obviously I'm excited to see in the proposed budget that Marshall, Shadeland, and Brighton Heights has the neighborhood plan planning process that, you know, would take place around that. So hopefully that comes you know, through, and that'll, you know, everyone will be on board to keep that in the budget because it's very much needed. And could you, you know, it's kind of, there was I think the Councilwoman Gross brought it up that, like, somehow if we didn't lose or we added planners, that this would have like an, you know, it would solve some of the issues that we see in neighborhoods of people that are being left behind. What should I look forward to in this neighborhood plan for Marshall, Shadeland, and Brighton Heights, which, you know, notable, they are experiencing the most shots fired of anywhere else in the north side, in my district. So, you know, I mean, to tie a conversation together around what should I expect in neighborhood plans, and I talk about this. I say, you know, when I go to the doors, if there was someone who had believe possibly a mental illness that, you know, is the alleged shooter of someone that killed someone in an intersection of Brighton Road and Davis Avenue. I went to the doors and, you know, spoke to the neighbors because they were so concerned about what was happening. And I mentioned this. I said, you know, in the proposed budget, we do have this neighborhood plan coming up, and I'm interested to see how this would play any part in, some sort of mitigating crime or really getting, filling gaps in housing, or, how does this neighborhood plans really speak to the larger conversation of how do we improve our neighborhoods and invest in these communities so that, we're not just focusing on a reactionary police approach, but an approach that really gets to the heart of, I think what we're all want to see is people not spending too much on housing, that they're spending 30% or less on housing, that they have job opportunities, that their kids, when they're, when they get outside of school, out of school hours, they have after school programming. I can continue to go on, but what is, are we really failing the city of Pittsburgh in a way by not doing this in every neighborhood? Or are there other opportunities that, take the place of this, these neighborhood plans whenever we don't have funding for it?
Well,
Sorry,
so, I mean, the neighborhood plans do, I mean, there was a lot. I'll try to answer as much of it as I can. I think that, there are a lot of things that neighborhood plans address, and it does vary by community. And so, there was a lot more of a focus on energy and stormwater when we were in Uptown. Then there was, or in Homewood, where we spent a lot more time on, on pedestrian activity and public safety. And there are things that neighborhood plans can affect more, and there are things that a neighborhood plan can affect less relative to those priorities. And so, there are some ways, I mean, in that case of Homewood, where they were more interested in public safety, there were a number of, kind of action items that came out of that, and goals for that came out that were to be more community driven. And, and in that, that public safety action team that, was a part of that planning project, Zone 5 was there and participating. So, I think it's one of those things that, as we start to come into a community to start one of these neighborhood planning processes, one of the things that's really important at the front end is to have the community and have residents come out and talk to us and let us know what those priorities are, so we can try to create those places where we focus. Every neighborhood plan won't be able to focus on everything, but we want to focus on the things that are more important to those, to those communities. And if it's creating zoning to think about how, development is more energy efficient in Uptown, or whether it's, kind of prioritizing community walks and pedestrian improvements in Homewood, or anywhere between there, on that scale, that's really what the beginning, parts of phases of those projects really start to identify. And, ultimately, in most of them, we do, neighborhoods change. And whether that's because people are moving in and out, or whether that's because, development is changing, or whether that's because jobs are coming or leaving, neighborhood plans, are there to try to figure out how that happens, and try to have the community help let us know how they want to see that happen, so that we can try to put policies in place, or try to put projects in place that are able to implement that.
Okay. You said that Homewood was interested in public safety. Can you expand on that? I know this is really getting maybe a little off topic, but I'm curious.
Yeah, so it was something that had come up, in our initial public engagements. It was something that came up from community leaders. It was something that that came in a way that was, I think, just stronger than we had heard from the other neighborhoods in our first round of neighborhood planning. Public safety and resident safety is a concern everywhere. But I think that it was much more of a focus in Homewood, and is a place where sometimes, I mean, if our world revolves around land use or is focused on land use, where sometimes there is, maybe a little less role for us to play. And that's where it's important for us to hear that early from folks so we can bring the right people and convene, and convene the right people to be able to have those discussions.
I asked the question because I've been having some, like I mentioned, there was some public safety concerns in these neighborhoods that we're going to go after for the neighborhood plan, and I've involved GVI, the Group Violence Intervention and Violence Prevention, into the conversation of alternatives, and so I wonder if we can, really use that component, which is going to be built into the new Office of Community Health and Safety. If we can really work with them on these neighborhood plans, and, if there's opportunities for that, if there's going to be outreach workers, how are we going to tie those outreach workers to the neighborhood planning process? And bringing, I mean, when we talk about neighborhood groups, a lot of times the neighborhood group isn't so representative of that neighborhood sometimes, and they try their best, and so I'm curious as to how we move forward with neighborhood planning process and involving the community health and safety, because I think that's a large part of the conversation that people want to they want to be addressed. They want to see an approach to solving larger systemic issues in our society, and not always the crosswalks and everything. I mean, obviously all that's needed, and I talked about speed humps earlier today in a previous briefing, and how that's really our number one call in a lot of ways, is how do we reduce speeding. But I am very, very interested to see how we can expand upon this neighborhood planning, because I think there's a real opportunity in this neighborhood plan. We have, we're going to make an investment in senior center in Brighton Heights, and there's space there. I just think the outreach workers could play a part in this role. Maybe get them involved in the engaged PGH in a way, so that they can say what programming is needed in those spaces. So anyway, just wanted to, I don't really have a question with that. It's more of a way for me just to talk more about what I'm interested in my own community and what we can provide them. But I don't have any further questions. I really appreciate all the work that you are doing, and I would like to ask if any other members, I see one still online, if anyone else has any questions, feel free to speak up now. If not, Director Bannock, do you have anything else to add before I make the closing remarks and anything else?
No, not at all. Just the announcements, and I believe you have those.
Okay, yeah, I'll make those. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and thanks Director Dash and Corey Lehman, Leah Friedman, and Grant Irwin for your time, and I believe we had Sarah as well. Thank you for your time. So tomorrow we have on Tuesday, December 1st, we'll resume budget hearings at 1:30 with the Commission of Human Relations in the Carnegie Library. Those are both chaired by Councilman Kraus, and the Oakland BID and Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership will be after that, and that's chaired by Councilman Daniel Lavelle. And at this time, I'd ask for a motion to be in recess. If not, I actually don't really know the role, if I can just do this all myself.
Councilwoman Strasburger may still be on.
Yeah.
She may be away though. Yeah. Recess.
We're in recess.